tonight. It's a little bit after 7, so we're going to go get started. If you could please find a seat. If we need more seats, we'll see if we can't help you a little bit. Rather than the invocation tonight, I want to take a moment to acknowledge one of our family members, both in the city of Jacksonville Beach and also with our police department. We lost one of probably the most popular police officers in the three big cities, in Andy Lavin. Andy unfortunately passed on Saturday. So if you would please rise and join in a moment of silence for our good friend and family member, Andy Lavin. Call the meeting order. Madam Clerk, will you roll call, please?
Councilmember Doherty. Councilmember Dumont. Here. Councilmember Golding. Here. Councilmember Hoffman. Here. Councilmember Nichols. Here. Councilmember Doblesang. Here. Mayor Latham.
Here. And moving on to agenda item 119, please. I'm sorry, 119, please.
I move that we approve the minutes from the City Council and Community Redevelopment Agency joint meeting held July 15, 2019.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, the motion carries. 120.
I move that we approve the minutes from the regular council meeting held on July 15, 2019.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Ms. Golding.
I would just like to ask that we, I don't know if we amend it or modify the minutes, because when I was declaring ex parte communication on one of the items, I mentioned that I spoke with Mr. Malin and my neighbor, but I neglected to say my neighbor's name, and her name is Tony Van Orman, and so I think it would be appropriate to add that to the record.
So noted. And any objection from the council? Let's put that up as a amendment to the motion. Can we get a second to accept? Okay, we've got a motion and a second to accept it as modified. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. Announcements. Ms. Hoffman.
Just wanted to announce that the 4th annual Beaches Health Jam is going to be held on Friday, this coming up Friday, from 4 to 7 at the Carver Center right in Jacksonville Beach. Several of the area Rotaries, the city of Jacksonville Beach, and a lot of the health organizations around town put it together. It's fun, it's free, it's family friendly, and you can get your blood pressure checked. And what's more fun than that? So I hope to see you out there on Friday.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Golding.
I'd just like to mention that Beaches Watch is hosting the monthly meeting that they have on Wednesday, which is the 7th, at the Beaches Branch Library, and it's a police panel which will have someone from each of the Beaches police departments that will be speaking about what's going on as far as public safety in our beach communities. There'll be a representative from Jacksonville Beach, the chief of Neptune Beach, and the chief of Atlantic Beach will be there. It should be a really interesting meeting. It'll be at 7 o'clock at the Beaches Branch Library, and I just encourage people to come out and hear what our police departments are dealing with and ask questions. There will be an opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golding. Okay, courtesy of the floor to visitors, I don't have any cards other than the ones tied to later agenda item. Has anybody submitted one?
I did.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. They're a little bit too organized for me. A couple of these paper clips stuck together. Okay, courtesy of the floor, we're going to start with Judy Malstrom. I'm sorry, Julie Malmstrom. Julie, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, fine. By now, Charlie, you should know my name
I
is
do.
Julie. And my name is Julie Malmstrom. I live at 2042 2nd Street South, Jacksonville Beach. Lived there 25 years. And I spoke 2.5 to 3 years ago about this subject to City Council about maybe putting a stop sign or a 4-way stop sign on 19th South and 2nd Avenue South. Well, the neighborhood has only gotten more densely populated. It's right in the corner of Betty Furlong's Center is there, where the disabled inevitably go to. Some walk, some drive. It's a voting center. There's a park there. Children go. People walk their dogs and walk. Before those houses were built, were on the pond there was an accident, a really bad accident. You know, a young man went in the pond, but that may have had nothing to do with it, the stop sign. They put the policeman came out, evaluated the situation, and told me that the DOT had approved this kind of thing. Well, and so he put a speed limit sign up, which you could barely see, they could trim that, but that's beside the point. It's really getting bad now, and as a matter of fact, I was in a small accident on an intersection on June 25th, which is documented. So I just want to speak again of that situation be reevaluated, corner of 2nd Avenue South and 19th, because 19th is usually a cutoff for many people from 3rd. Even Uber uses that on their GPS as a way to cut through 2nd, because there's no through 3 on 20th, and you know the area, so I just wanted to speak of that again. Hopefully someone can reevaluate that. I don't know who's here from the police, but that was when the previous chief was on.
Thank you, Julie. Well, actually, if you're going to be around at the end of the meeting, the city manager takes a moment to go through some of the comments from citizens on the floor, and we'll address that.
Thank you.
Lori Anderson. Lori, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
She started already. I'm Lori Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of Mission House here in Jacks Beach, 800 Shutter Avenue. I wanted to just come to the committee tonight. I thought it was an appropriate time. In June, there were quite a few articles about homelessness, and it was shocking that people still don't know what we do. So we wouldn't be seeing a lot more of us, and shame on me that I don't update you as much as I should. But I just wanted to let you know, for those who don't know, that Mission House is the only agency helping homeless men and women in the beaches area from Mayport to Jacksonville Beach. And we are very similar to the Urban Stop, my friends, in front housing downtown, but we've been around for 22 years. We serve 2 hot meals a day, but that certainly is not all that we do. I have 3 case managers, and meals just sustain these people while they're working on getting homes and houses with our case manager. Just to let you know what we've done in 2018, and for those of you who are lucky enough to get my sheet, there's some more on the table there. In 2018, we housed 114 men and women in the beaches area. And I'm very proud to tell you that right now, currently, as of July 31st, we have housed 83 men and women. 60 of those people have been housed for at least 5 to 6 months. The rest are too new. But one of my case managers is strictly responsible for following the people for an entire year. I think we are a very special place. We work hand in hand with the Jacks Beach Police Department, and we're just going to come and update you every now and then, because again, as I said, I was just really surprised that people still don't know what we do, and someone thought, quote, that our volunteers feed people and then pat themselves on the back and go home. And my folks work far too hard to have that said about them. We have over 600 volunteers who give their heart and their soul each and every day. And we love the city and we love our folks and we do a lot for the community. So I just wanted to share that with you and let you know that we are a part of this community. We are a great neighbor, and I thank you all for your support, because many, many of you have helped us tremendously, including many people in this room. So thank you very much, and as I said, you'll probably see us next quarter.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for all you do for the community. You guys are giving me so many cards, it takes a second here every time to do a quick adjustment. No pressure, none at all, right? 150 people looking. Okay. Casey Jones. Casey, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
How you doing? Casey Jones. I got some bad news. We had a whole nest go the wrong way. A whole nest. Every baby sea turtle, the tide was coming in and it was about to go back out, and it was literally 15 feet the nest was. And every one of them went the wrong way. Thank God I got a phone call at 9:30 and said, hey, I think this nest is about to hatch. And I said, well, is there any illegal lights around? They said, I don't know what that means. I said, can you see any lights, any light bulbs behind the nest? They said, oh yeah, they're everywhere. I said, what do you mean they're everywhere? She said, there's a light on directly behind on a construction trailer. I said, it's right behind the nest? She said, yeah. I said, where's the other lights coming from? She said, the big high-rise condo. I said, you can see it? Is it super bright white LED light? She said, yes, there's 2 of them. I said, you gotta be kidding me. She said, no. I said, what nest is this? She said, 37. I said, I'll be there as quick as I can. Me and my wife jumped in the car. So, this is one dead one that we found the next day. This is the pool that we found 10 baby sea turtles swimming in the pool. There was about 10 more headed towards the pool, in the pool area. You'll have blowout ditches or whatever, I don't know what they are, they're drainage. You know, they look for the stars and they possibly look for the moon, the reflection off the water. I'm sorry, I get a little emotional. You know, this isn't my first time being here. I came here June 12th, 2017, and told y'all about y'all's illegal lights. I had a meeting with the city manager 47 days ago about the lights. I gave y'all pictures. I want y'all to look at that stop sign with a baby sea turtle walking down First Street. You have sea turtles walking down your street. Update the lighting ordinance. Please, Jesus. Fix the lights, fix the illegal lights. And there's illegal lights on First Street. Of course, the lights in the parking lot are the worst. The ones on First Street are illegal as all get out.
Thank you. Next will be Liz Dallas. We don't typically, we don't respond, we'll hold on till the end. Liz Dallas. Liz, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, ma'am.
My name is Liz Dallas. My address is 14823 Formosa Drive. We'd like to thank you for allowing us to speak to you tonight. I'm Liz Dallas, and I'm here with our club president, Liz Lassiter. We're from the GFWC, Jacksonville Beaches Women's Club. And we're here to speak to you about domestic violence awareness and prevention project that we have named Tie a Purple Ribbon Around the Old Palm Tree. We started this last year in Neptune Beach, and we would like to expand it to include all of our beaches communities. October is Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, and we're here to request your authorization to place purple ribbons on the palm trees on Beach Boulevard between 2nd and 3rd Street, and perhaps some around City Hall. All ribbons would be removed by October 31st, and we don't want to plaster them everywhere, but we think that they're a gentle reminder that domestic violence is a social problem. It affects family members, friends, co-workers, other witnesses, and our community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, what we'll do is, I've got your contact information here, you can have somebody from the city manager's office contact you there.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You bet.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Donnie Wells Rawls. Donnie, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Donnie Welch-Rawls, 403 12th Avenue South. I speak today because my property, which is at the epicenter of the stormwater drainage construction project, has now suffered direct damages due to this project. We are located at the corner of 4th Street and 12th Avenue South and have dealt with many issues resulting from this project for a year. These issues include noise, dust, dirt, loss of privacy, loss of quality of life, safety problems, nails and debris left in the road when there was a road, lack of access to our own home when there was no road, garbage everywhere, street closures, etc. For 4 months, there was a huge hole 10 feet deep and 40 feet across immediately adjacent to my property. However, some of the most disturbing aspects of being at ground zero of the construction has been the pounding of heavy machinery on 2 sides of my house, resulting in vibrations and shaking inside my home. Until this time, I did not know what an earthquake felt like. In many cases, the pounding, drilling, and digging were literally taking place right by my property line, which is close to the structure itself. This is when the obvious signs of structural damage began. I brought this to the attention of the city, and the contractor at that time was assured that with proof and proper documentation, things would be made right. On July 8th, I emailed the assistant city attorney with no response, so I emailed again a week later. Ms. May responded stating that the contractor, Petticoat Schmidt, is responsible, and she attached the insurance certificate for them. So I emailed the city manager. He responded that correspondence should go through the city and that the contractor is not liable nor at fault. And he CC'd Ms. May, James Healy, Lauren Atwell, James Vernon, Dennis Dupree, and David Milner. I further emailed Ms. May on July 18th, 19th, the 26th, August 1st, and August 2nd, all without any form of response. At this point, due to the construction project, not only have I had a year of miserable conditions, but an overall loss of property value. The construction staging area, formerly a park, is my front yard view. Worst of all, I now have structural damage to my property. The city tells me the contractor is liable. The contractor states they bear no responsibility. There needs to be better treatment of citizens and taxpayers, and there needs to be resolved the damages sustained to my property that are due directly to actions by the city of Jacksonville Beach and Petticoat Schmidt contractors. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The city manager will be summarizing his comments as we wrap up the end of the meeting, so if you can stick around a little bit, he'll address your concerns. Thank you. George Sherwood. George, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
George Sherwood, 734 2nd Street North. This has nothing to do with the accident that occurred, the fatality on 2nd Street, but 2nd Street North between 9th and 6th has turned into a racetrack. We've had people run over our yards. There's 8 houses in our development. Our neighbors stand out on the weekends and yell at people to slow down. In my opinion, there either needs to be heavy police presence and enforcement, or we need some sort of traffic device, speed bumps, or anything that can just deter the high rate of speed that's being traveled down that street. It seems like something has to be done before this happens again. We all know that the traffic is only going to get worse down there, definitely not better. And whether that will increase or decrease speeds, I guess that remains to be seen. But I ask you to please look into this before someone else dies.
Yes, sir. We will, and we'll get back to you personally.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ron Taylor. Ron, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
If I could, if you wouldn't mind my daughter speaking first.
Sure.
Savannah Taylor, she's
Okay.
Hi, my name is Savannah Taylor. I live at 360 13th Avenue North, Jacksonville Beach, Florida. I apologize in advance if I do get emotional, but I am here to talk about the fatality that occurred on July 11th in Jacksonville Beach, because I personally knew Bryn Turner. Even though he only lived here for about 2 months, I've gotten to know Bryn better than people that I've known my whole entire life. He was a truly phenomenal human being, most intelligent person I've ever met. He was a major in genetics at Clemson University, a double minor in philosophy and microbiology. He was down here doing clinical research at Mayo, and he worked in Atlantic Beach. He lived on 16th Avenue North. All of the news reports report him as a visitor to our beaches, but he lived here. He was just as much of a local as anyone. He loved surfing at the poles. He went to the taco truck on 13th Avenue North, all things that I've done my whole life. I've been a resident of Jacksonville Beach my entire life. I went to San Pablo and then Fletcher Middle and Fletcher High. When I was younger, I was raised, if I was lost, to find the nearest policeman and tell him, "Hi, my uncle's Art Graham, can you please call him?" Because anyone knows who Art Graham is. I love Jacksonville Beach. It made me who I was. It runs through my veins. And I am incredibly disheartened to be up here speaking about this, because I do also believe that how Jax Beach is at the moment played an incredible role in my beloved friend's death. I'm here asking you because I was able to vote for the first time in November, and I voted for many of you sitting here. I'm sorry, I don't know all of the names and I can't remember right now, but I'm a constituent, and I'm feeling a loss like no other. Someone that is 19 shouldn't know what it's like to lose a friend this tragically and this suddenly, and to know that it was preventable by many things. I'm asking you to please consider what my dad has to say, and to please listen and put in place policy that'll make sure no one ever has to feel like this again in our beaches community. I love Jax Beach, but Bryn Stevenson Turner deserved a lot better. Julio Gomez, who is also with Bryn, deserves better. And I beg you just to listen and to help us out, because I do believe that we can make a positive change that will keep things like this from happening again. Thank you.
Thank you, Savannah. Okay, Ron, you want to come up? Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you. Ron Taylor, 360 13th Avenue North, Jacksonville Beach. I'm extremely proud of my daughter for being able to get up here and talk like she did. I didn't plan on her being here, so the first part of my speech was to tell you about Bryn. This is from his celebration of life that we've attended in Charleston, and the number of people that showed up was absolutely amazing. He was an absolutely amazing kid. And his death, while ultimately is the drunk driver that ran him over's fault, the question that kept running through my mind was, who let Bryn Turner down? Who let him down? He had so much going for him, and he had so much life. He was going to be a doctor. From the time he was 8, he wanted to be a doctor without borders. He just knew that he wanted to help people. And having read this book, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, How the Navy SEALs Lead and Win, has had an amazing effect on me, and I suggest you all read it. Because when something like this happens, you have to say, what role did I play in it? What role did you play in it? What role did Public Works play in it? Is the lighting okay on 2nd Street? Are there not enough stop signs or speed bumps? What can we all do to prevent this kind of thing? There's a culture in Jacksonville Beach right now. I've lived here for 31 years, and I don't think our culture is headed where we need it to go, and we need to change that. And culture can be changed. I ask any of you, what don't you do going up 3rd Street in Neptune Beach? You don't speak. Neptune Beach has changed our culture. We all know that. What rules can we enforce? What can we do so that this doesn't happen and that our city goes back to being the family place that it should be? I love raising my daughter here, but we can change the culture. My personal thoughts were, I haven't been to city council meeting, I've been to very few of them, since my good friend Art Graham was no longer on the council. But I will be back. I will be back every week, every time you have a meeting, not just you, because it's my duty to this young man to make sure we have the best city we can possibly have. And everybody in every department needs to look inside themselves and say, who let him down? How could I have better served Bryn and everybody else so none of this happens again. Thank you for your time, and please remember Brent.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Shandy Thompson. Shandy, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
What's up to doctor? My name is Jamie Thompson. I live at 522 3rd Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach, Florida, 32250. As you guys are probably well aware, we have another staple business closing in our downtown area. I, as other beach residents, are starting to feel the pressure of like, are we going to make it as a beach city? As growth and rent is drastically increasing, downtown is bleeding over into District 1 with Cheddar, First, Second, and Third. I welcome the new businesses. I'm super excited about Andy's new spot. I have to question, are we planning ahead for this? For example, South 5th Street, there are potholes all over it. Stop signs are blocked by new signs, by trucks, by building pieces. Trash is now being more prevalent in our yard. It's no longer us talking to our neighbors, it's rather us talking to transients and visitors to respect our property and our beach. New and old businesses are no longer respecting what we have on paper, so code enforcement, I know works Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you see it up. Sign waving flags and other things like that. So it's not a secret amongst the whole beach, from Palm Beach to Atlantic Beach, that where I live is considered a suffrage part. Everyone knows that we're the weakest link of the beach. I'm kind of ready for that to change. I'm ready to get on a Facebook page and hear, wow, that area is starting to look really nice, and so don't move there. You don't want to go there at night. Stay away from the whole area, whatever that means. I'm just really sad with what's happening, and I just feel a little bit helpless. So I'm coming to you again to start thinking ahead on what's happening with our beach and where it's bleeding. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Sarah Bryan. Sarah, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello again. Sarah Bryan, 403 12th Avenue South. This is kind of a mixed bag tonight. Our area, like many others in Jacksonville Beach, is experiencing quite an influx of single-family homes being purchased to then have builders come in, request variance changes, and then build multiple 2-unit houses. They're probably great short-term rental options. But my question and concern here lies with the changes in the variances and how that applies to the lot coverage and drainage issues. That it's kind of been a back and forth with the builders and making sure that there's enough drainage. Basically, the remedy and how they're kind of going about things is, sure you're all familiar with the kind of unattractive driveways that are rocks. Cement, rocks. It's basically just strips of concrete and strips of gravel. My problem here is we're seeing some of the new and relatively new homeowners in our area that are now moved in, been there for a little while. They're actually ripping up all the rocks, the concrete, and they're installing complete paver driveways. Not only that, they're also pulling up the grass, wrapping those pavers all the way around their houses and into their backyards, making a paved paradise. I'm just curious how these modifications that will, no doubt, limit drainage, how that falls in line with the stipulations and the restrictions that you put on the builders, and what can be done to maybe inform these homeowners as to why they have the unattractive driveways, because the builders are trying to jump the hoops. It's just, the efforts that you guys are putting forth with the meetings with the builders, if that just gets wiped away in 6 months, 8 months, 4 months, when a new homeowner moves in, they just slap in a bunch of pavers, what's the point in the whole roundabout to begin with? I just think that people need to be informed, and that would probably eliminate a lot, but we are seeing that, and the fix that the builders are doing is then just basically getting wiped away. Next, Petticoat and Schmidt, kind of touching on what Ms. Rawls mentioned. She covered a lot, but I also want to mention the fact that we've had multiple issues with our irrigation through this whole year process. Multiple fixes, multiple bursts, multiple mess ups. And now we've been notified by Beaches Energy that our water bill's tripled, so there's clearly a leak somewhere. But why I'm bringing this up to you guys outside of the complaints that we're dealing back and forth with Petticoat and the city attorney, is basically moving forward for you guys. You should probably have it written in your contracts that licensed professionals work on any fixes. By any contracts that you're writing out. You know, just because Petticoat Schmidt is out there, they're not irrigation guys. They look at us dumbfounded, and my fiance literally sits there and says, you want this, you want this, you want this, you need this connector, you need this connector, you're gonna do it here, 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 here. And we say, we're not irrigation guys. And we're like, we're putting our trust, our water bill, all of this on what you guys are doing. So you should have something in there for that. Running out of time, I'm gonna skip some stuff. The last thing, and on a good note, Jim Vernon has been so helpful, so attentive through this whole project. He's been a breath of fresh air. Honestly, he was our worst enemy, we thought initially, because he was our only point of contact. And it's a joy talking with him and dealing with him. He really listens to us. He takes care of us. And I think that he's an asset to the city of Jacksonville Beach, and he should be recognized for what he's doing for such a big project, basically by himself. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sarah, I'm going to give your card back to the county, or to the city clerk. Your phone number's not on here. It says on file. But if you put your phone number on there, I'll make sure that somebody contacts you.
Great, thank you.
Mitch Kinsey, I didn't even see you come in. Mitch, where are you?
You're looking for a different one.
Yeah, I guess I am. Mitch, if you give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, so my wife asked me, we've been talking about this for years, my neighbors and myself. I've spoken with Miss Sandy. Miss Sandy, thank you for being so attentive to taking notes to everybody's concerns. That did not go unrecognized. I have 4 children. My name's Mitch Kinsey. I live at 2007 Eastern Drive. It's by Fletcher High School. It's known as a cut-through road. It cuts off at 18th. 18th turns into Eastern Drive, and Eastern Drive runs into Seagate. So whenever they come, there's 2 policemen that live on the corner of 18th and Eastern. They park their marked vehicles on the road. It doesn't deter. It's not just the kids at Fletcher. It's a cut-through road. They come off of Seagate, they punch it, they go all the way to 18th, they slow down at 18th, and they go on to 18th. They come off of 18th, come on Eastern Drive, they punch it. I've called the police several times. I had Rita Manette. I had Andy there. I did get nervous because I'm passionate about my children and the children on my road. And I think we need to look at their future and protect them. I put a fence in my yard. I applied for a variance for a fence in my yard to get it 5 feet off the road. I built the fence. I put the fence up. Miss Cooper's here. She's not speaking, but she is here. She's lived there for 40 years. 40 years. She had a fence in her yard. The traffic is bad. I scraped up cats. I scraped up dogs. I scraped up squirrels. I buried them. We've had the traffic strips out there to see how much traffic we've had on our road. I was told we have plenty of traffic, not enough accidents. That's what I was told. I think that's absurd. We're looking, me and my neighbors, I spoke with every neighbor on my road. Every one of them on my road wants speed bumps or stop signs. Every one of them. I didn't talk to one of them that lives on Eastern Drive. We have so many new families, young families. We do have elderly families that have grandkids. Miss Cooper has grandkids, and they're over there all the time. My kids go to her yard because it's so big, so they have to cross the road so they can play in her yard. She lets all the neighborhood kids play in her yard. I want to see something done. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't know what we need to do something. And I think somebody was up here earlier and they said, you know, they're looking for the change of the city. And I've lived here all my life. My father was a councilman multiple times here. I just want to see something done. Not just, we're going to need speed bumps. We're going to need a stop sign. We're going to need something. And it's not just my road. They're in every city. They're on Eunice. They're in Neptune Beach. They're on Seagate now. I'm told that's a state road. I need to look further into that myself, so I'm a little more educated on that. But that's why I'm here, to get something done. Thank you for your time.
Sir, I'll have some, make sure you get contact.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex Evans. Alex, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Evans. I'm on 2015 Eastern Drive. I live 2 houses down from Mr. Kinsey here. So, I'm with him. Fortunately, we haven't had a fatality like other folks have tonight, but we want to prevent one, essentially. We've got 6 girls within 3 houses along that corridor, ages 1 to 13 years old. They're all within like 4 houses. We also have at least 12 elderly between 65 and 80 in that corridor. I call it a corridor. It's Eastern Drive. It connects from Seagate to Penman. If you ride it, and it's full concourse, and then 18 intersects in the middle. The big sticking point you heard a lot was the high school kids. Obviously, in the morning there's congestion. You do when they're running late, they come screaming through there in the morning. In the afternoon when they let out in the early lunch, they're gunning it around the corner. They turn off Seagate on the Eastern, and then Arden Way intercepts. So that's a 3-way there. And we're pushing for either a 3-way stop sign at that intersection if you can't have speed bumps and/or speed bumps, whatever makes the most sense. But there's been 3 cats, at least in the last school year, if not more. Like Mr. Kinsey said, we bought this house. We're very fortunate to be in the neighborhood. It was 2015 when we came in. I'm so thankful to be there. It's such a great area, and I quite frankly, I hate to complain, but I was shocked. Of the kids that came through, and since then I've got a 17-year-old little girl, and it's just I'm passionate about it, and anything that I can do to contribute to that, I'm here to speak to this fact, and like Mr. Kinsey and everyone else, we'd like to see. It doesn't seem like a lot to ask, so we'd like to see something done. Appreciate you hearing us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We'll have somebody contact you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any other courtesy of the floor cards that aren't tied to an agenda item. Did somebody submit something? I didn't see it. All the other cards I have for speakers are tied to the short-term rental. Is there anybody else that wanted to talk about something different? Okay, great. Then move on into agenda item 19-121, please.
Do you want to open the floor for nominations? The pension board trustee? Normally we just open it for nominations.
That's the next one. Okay, yeah, let's open the floor for nominations for the position of trustee on the police officer's pension board. Any nominees? Ms. Golden?
I'd like to nominate John Castillo.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for John Castillo. Is there any other nominees? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. And do you want to? Max, you're here, aren't you? Yeah, come on, he's got a tie on, too. Come on up, Max. We're all grateful for the first responders we have in the community, and that includes our lifeguards. And Max is one of the lifeguards that has been here a very long time and has done a tremendous job for us. And he also has been working with the City of Jacksonville's Emergency Operations Center and coordinating a lot of the activities with us for the hurricanes. But we're going to call him out tonight for a rescue that was quite exceptional. I'm going to read the plaque first. says, "This is a Distinguished Valor Award presented to Maxwell Ravanian on July 5th, 2019, in the early morning hours just after midnight. Your demonstration of honor, courage, and commitment is duly acknowledged and appreciated for saving a person from drowning 250 yards beyond here in Jacksonville Beach. You are commended for a job well done." Now, I read the history of what he did, and he was very calm. He kept the other person very calm. I guess you were trying to get him from a paddleboard first. And then eventually, it was becoming unruly, and so you took direct contact with the individual and brought him in closer to get some assistance.
Provided restraint.
There you go, restraint maneuver, very good. But that's about as hero as it gets, especially 250 yards off the pier. So please join me in thanking Max for all the work. Okay, 123, please.
I move that we award RFP number 07-1819 groundskeeping materials to 7 vendors.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Mr. Stavropoulos.
This item is for awarding supply of materials to 7 different providers, and to speak on the issue is Trevor Hughes from our golf course.
Trevor Hughes, Golf Course Superintendent, Jackson Beach Golf Club. We're asking to award non-exclusive contracts to the 7 vendors: Bullet Golf Ventures, Harold's, Helena, Howard, Residex, and Site One Landscape. The reason for needing them is mainly our operating supplies budget is approximately $200,000. It's also very difficult to forecast all of our agronomic needs, and to do so, we don't have enough warehouse space to space all the items. Also, the old landfill creates extremely difficult agronomic conditions to overcome. All right, so as we evaluated we put out an RFP. Committee came together, we evaluated the RFP. No single respondent provided any clearly defined pricing or overall product advantage. Each respondent met or exceeded the qualifications of resources criteria. Wide-ranging product variety along with broad specialization and expertise makes this a unique solicitation. So we're going to gain access to each of these companies' expertise to help us solve some of the problems we have on the golf course. All right, we'll no longer have a need to store the products as there's multiple warehouses in town. We can get products immediately for immediate applications. This will expedite our procurement process. Currently, if we go out, we scout, we see immediate need, it could be up to 3 weeks, which could end up affecting revenue and cause damage, further damage to the golf course. Also, we're seeking approval to exceed the $25,000 purchasing thresholds. So we're asking to approve the finding. Oops, sorry.
The slide too far.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do you have anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay, anything from the council, Ms. Golden?
Could you just tell me on the summary pricing sheet that you provided us, there's some that list discount, and so the price that's next to that, is that after discount or is that prior to discount?
It's after the discount.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldie. Any other questions? Comments from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Golding? Yes. Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. 124, please.
I move that we approve findings of fact for RD ordinance number 2014-8058 dated July 16, 2019.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Mr. Stefopoulos.
Yes, there were three items at the last council meeting that all require findings of fact that were not presented at that time. Getting some recuperation. It was not presented at that time due to the fact that there was potential for variability in the findings by council. So this is the first of those three items, which was related to the lawsuit from Surfer the Bar and the settling of that with regards to ordinance 2014-8058. Mr. Mann is here if you have any questions for him about the findings of fact.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Golden?
I just have a question about item number 6 in the findings of fact. The sentence doesn't seem to be complete, so I'm not sure what's missing, but it says the provision of open space, landscaping, stormwater retention, and signage will per LDC standards.
The missing word would be the building planning director.
Will be per LDC standards, okay, thank you.
The pursuant, yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the motion as including the Scrivener errors. Okay. Madam Clerk, may we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Sandy, excuse me, yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. And 125, please.
I move that we approve findings of fact, RD ordinance number 2019-8120 dated July 16, 2019.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Mr. Stefopoulos.
These are the findings of fact associated with the zoning change associated with the Spring Hill Suites proposed to be built downtown. Mr. Mann is again available for any questions.
Ms. Golden.
Sorry, I keep asking a lot of
Sorry,
questions.
you're doing good.
Mr. Mann, item number 4, the last sentence states the maximum building height allowed shall be 35 feet. I believe that that's not correct. And this is on page 2. I believe the building is supposed to be, what, 56 feet or something like that?
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me, Bill Landis, I'm trying to get into context. Yes, ma'am, that is simply a restatement of the standards that are found in section 34-347, and that was a reiteration of the citywide 35-foot height cap, which you are correct in this case, that the property does have vesting to 56 feet. But that section of these standards is a literal verbatim reiteration of what section 34-347 standards are. So for any other project that didn't have vested height, that would be a valid statement.
But for the findings of fact, should we not have the correct height in there?
That can be deleted. The actual findings
Okay.
of fact are found on the last page, though.
Okay.
But no, it's a good catch. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. 126, please.
I move that we approve the findings of fact, PUD ordinance number 2019-8121 dated July 16, 2019.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Mr. Stefopoulos.
This is the third of the findings of fact. This is associated with the proposed expansion of Pablo Hamlet.
Any comments or questions from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. And I just want to announce a housekeeping issue. I'm going to move the agenda around and put the short-term rental, which is the most popular one here tonight, as the first resolution that we'll discuss. So for
purposes of those who are leaving or staying. Just want to let you know that was going to happen. Okay, 127, please.
I move that we approve the dedication to the city and acceptance for maintenance of the public infrastructure improvements, potable water, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and roadway and underground electrical improvements constructed by the developer Sedona Investors LLC.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Mr. Stefopoulos.
Yes, this is a plat dedication of new right-of-way infrastructure being accepted by the city. The city engineer, Marty Margrom, is here if you have any questions.
Do you have any statements, Marty, or anything you want to bring up?
Yes, I can say a few words about it. My name is Marty Morton. I'm the city engineer in the Public Works Department in Jacksonville Beach. Basically, what this is a six-unit residential area just off of Ponte Vedra Boulevard, just north of Mills Lane, which is really close to the St. Johns County line. And so basically, what we normally do in situations like this, the developer pays the capital improvement costs and the construction of the water, sewer, storm water, and roadway, and curb and gutter. So all we're doing is basically accepting that as part of the city's infrastructure now, and then we'll be maintaining it
For perpetuity.
for perpetuity, correct. And in addition to that, we had the developer provide the city a one-year performance and payment bond for that. So if anything happens, the city staff will go there and do probably an 11th month inspection. If we find anything, then we'll have the contractor repair anything that's defective.
And then after that, it's ours.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else have questions or comments? Thanks, Marty. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. 128, please.
I move that we approve the purchase of one Elgin Crosswind street sweeper from Environmental Products Group, Inc., utilizing the Florida Sheriff's contract, and approve early purchase order release August 2019 to lock in the current price and reduce unit delivery time.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Mr. Stefopoulos.
This is the purchase of a replacement street sweeper, which was shown to the council last Friday at our budget showcase. The benefit of bringing it forward at this time is that if we move forward with the issuance of a purchase order at this time, we can get benefit of discount pricing before the end of the year. So staff is looking for that authorization in order to save some taxpayer money.
Any comments or questions from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. 129, please.
I move that we approve change order for bid number 1718-23 for the installation of fiber optic cable for the 805 transmission line between Beaches Energy Services, Sampson, and Guana substations.
Got a motion and a second, Mr. Stefopoulos.
Beaches Energy Director, Mr. Putnam, is here to talk to you a little bit about this particular project.
Putnam, Director of Beaches Energy. We came to you several months ago and asked for permission to do this project and authorize the spending for it. In the middle of the project, we came across a conflict with Florida East Coast Railroad, which is quite common doing these types of projects. And at the time, they wanted us to go from overhead to underground at this railroad crossing on US 1. We fought and fought with them. They finally said, we want to go underground. So of course we had to redesign the entire project, and construction came to a halt. So all the crews that came from out of town had to be were deployed back to where they came from. Finally, after quite a bit of wrangling with them, they agreed to let us go back overhead again, because the cost would have been significantly higher than the one I'm coming to ask you for today. So they did agree finally to let us go overhead. We had to reissue some permits, and now we want to bring the crews back to finish those last 10 spans to complete this project. So I'm asking for the change order to actually redeploy that fiber crew back to Jacksonville to help us.
Which totals at $37,000.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments from the council? Ms. Golding?
Do we have any recourse with, who is it?
Or East Coast Railway?
FEC, yeah, I mean, because
Never.
it sounds like they're costing us a lot of money.
You know, they're the final word on any crossing of a railroad. It's whether it's CSX or Florida East Coast Railroad. Well, anytime you do any overhead work or underground work anywhere near a railway, it is exactly like this. You're at their beck and call, you can do what they ask you to do.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Foley?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes, 130, please.
I move that we approve requesting state appropriation for the purchase and installation of license plate readers for the police department.
Second.
And a motion and a second, Mr. Stefopoulos.
When you met with the police department a little bit earlier tonight on their budget review, and they told you they had gotten everything that they asked for, that was everything that they needed. One of the things that they wanted is license plate readers at 9 discrete locations, a total of 27 cameras throughout the city. One of the things that they've identified is this would be a big benefit of monitoring vehicles coming into and out of Jacksonville Beach for the perspective of crime prevention and tracking the vehicles that have be on the lookout or bolos issued for them or are being pursued by other law enforcement agencies. This is one where we think that there's an opportunity to work with our local legislators to potentially get an appropriation from the state for the first-year capital funds necessary to purchase and install the license plate reader cameras. One of the things that one of our local legislators has asked is the council on board with the fact that we want to pursue this formal appropriation, and in the event that we don't get 100% funding, would we be willing to make up the difference? That's not uncommon in the world of appropriations. So with that being said, I'm looking for a formal ratification of this being an appropriation that staff will lobby the legislature for and see if we can get some money towards these license plate readers. The first year cost is estimated to be just about $150,000. That includes the capital, the installation, and the first year licensing agreement. After that, the price drops down to, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000 per year for the licensing going forward after that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. There's also a summary on page 2 by Chief Smith as to the benefit of license plate readers and the fact that the recent case of a vehicle from Alabama being in our jurisdiction probably could have been tracked down a lot quicker and a lot easier if we had that technology in place.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. When it comes to storing the information, we're looking at the cost of the increased storage we're going to need in addition to what our cameras already are using. Storing the data, so data storage.
Yeah, I believe the police department will have the capabilities to store a certain amount of time. They won't store it indefinitely, but they'll have a certain window of hours or days worth of data that they store and then just keep it on a continuous loop.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Golden?
Thank you. Can somebody explain, like, we have 9 locations and 27 cameras, so how does that work?
My understanding from talking to Chief Smith is that the cameras are discrete per lane. So when you talk about a camera being at a location, it doesn't survey the entire intersection. It's focused on one particular lane of travel. So based on the 9 locations, there's approximately 3 cameras at each location to catch traffic going in either direction. In some cases, it's 2 lanes one way and one lane the other. So that would be the total of 3 cameras at that location. So that's the reason for 27 cameras at 9 locations.
I would just like to say that in reading the chief's narrative, I'm glad that they came to us with this because I think this is a really good thing that we need to be doing.
I agree. We've actually, both city manager and I have been in touch with Senator Bean, and he's going to do his best to get us the full appropriation, but I'm not expecting that's going to happen, so this is our way of contributing. And this has been beneficial to us, you know, in a partial install with some criminals that came through town from Georgia, is that right? Alabama. And so it was very beneficial for us, and this would kind of complete the loop to make it a complete project citywide. So certainly I support it as well. Ms. Hoffman?
I was just curious, it mentioned a neighboring jurisdiction that already had the LPR technology. Do we know which jurisdiction it is?
I believe the vehicle from Alabama was picked up in St. Johns County on I-95. And so we knew that they were headed into this general area, but we did not know that they had crossed over the JTB into Jacks Beach.
Thank you. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Jamont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. Item 131, please.
Well, there's two options available on this one. So
Let's turn this over to the city manager for discussion and introduction to the city attorney.
Thank you. Yes, let me give an introduction to this item, and then Ms. May is here to answer any detailed questions if there are any. A few weeks ago, the city administration was contacted by an attorney from the city's insurance company. And the insurance company, or the attorney for the insurance company, was asking about coverage for one of our council members to defend them with regard to a complaint that had been filed with the Commission on Ethics. So after we did a little bit more research as staff, and we did some outreach to the insurance company as well, when we had taken this item back in front of council on June 17th, the topic of the item was to discuss whether or not there was a violation of the city charter. And as that conversation evolved during the course of the item, there was a suggestion that a complaint to the Commission on Ethics be filed, and to confirm whether or not that there was a violation of any of the state ethics legislation that's out there. One of the things that we did not know is that once the formal ethics complaint is filed, our insurance for elected officials kicks in. And that gives the elected individual who is the subject of such a claim the ability to use the attorney provided by the insurance company and to start incur charges against our $25,000 deductible. So the long and short is, when this item was first in front of you in June, it originally was starting as a conversation about whether or not there was a violation of city charter. It morphed into sending something to the state, but there was never a conversation with this council about whether or not either the council or Councilmember Vogelsang were willing to incur financial costs for a legal defense of a formal complaint to the Commission on Ethics. One of the things that we did do was a little bit of exploration as to whether there were some options with the Commission on Ethics. Ms. May had reached out to them and talked to their attorney on call, who indicated there is an option of rescinding the formal complaint and submitting a request for a formal opinion. And there's a process that goes along with that, with a statement of facts that are ratified by both of this board as well as Councilmember Vogelsang. So given the fact that the finances were never discussed at the first meeting as an impact to either the City Council or to Mr. Vogelsang, we felt it necessary to bring this forward to make sure we were all on the same page. And then secondly, there is an alternative moving forward, and we wanted to see what the council felt about that. With regards to the cost, there is the $25,000 deductible is applicable to each individual claim that is defended by the insurance company. So in this particular instance, since it's the city council that filed the complaint, legal fees, should Mr. Vogelsang choose to use the insurance appointed attorney, those charges would start to accrue. And at some point, depending on the disposition of findings from the Council on Ethics, the resulting dollar amount would either be placed on Mr. Vogelsang or be absorbed by the city. I'm not sure that was clear when this was first presented to you. And so the two items before you are, do you want to consider with this going to the Commission on Ethics and deal with the financial impacts at a later point in time based on disposition? Or the other alternative would be to withdraw the formal complaint and request an opinion by the Commission on Ethics. And I would turn it over to Ms. May to talk a little bit about what that process would involve and what an actual opinion from the Commission on Ethics means with regards to the council and the individual council member.
Thank you. Yes, councilors, as we said, the decision for you tonight would be to, that number 2 would have to be bifurcated. In other words, you have to make a decision whether to proceed with the complaint or withdraw it. If you want to withdraw it, there is, the Commission on Ethics has directed me to the Florida Administrative Code governing withdrawal of complaints. Withdrawal of official complaints can only be done for good cause. They must be requested in writing and signed by the complainant who sent it up. In other words, it would be signed by the mayor on behalf of the city, just as we sent the original complaint up. In order to do so, we need to put that in writing. You need to make certain findings that it is for good cause and state what those good cause reasons are. They say good cause shall be determined based on legal sufficiency or insufficiency of the complaint to allege a violation, and it depends upon the stage of the disposition. In my discussion with Ms. Clancy today, who is the senior attorney with the Commission on Ethics, she's pointed me to, we are very early in the disposition of this complaint, and so it is a good time for that. I explained to her in reading our minutes from the original July 16th that this started as an opinion at all times, and our concern became, or the concern of the council became making sure that it was a fair and equitable fact. In other words, not just the city's facts, that Mr. Felderstein would also have an opportunity to have his facts presented. And that's the reason that this council tended to go down a complaint-driven path. In light of what we now know and the requirement to defend, it would be appropriate if this council sees fit to first decide whether you want to make that withdrawal for those reasons, state those reasons, and take a vote as to that. If that vote is to withdraw, there would be a second procedure for actually going down a formal opinion. In order to ask for the formal opinion, there is a question of an ability of standing to ask for this. And the way the Commission on Ethics sees that is standing to request an opinion is for the individual for which liability could be incurred. Okay? So in other words, the council member involved, or at least his acquiescence in such opinion. If that's something you want to look at after your first vote, if it's something you could certainly, I would offer if you could direct the city attorney to attempt a draft at facts on an opinion that would come back before this council for your opinion on whether those are the facts as you see them, and Councilmember Huffington's acquiescence or change to such facts. And then we could submit that up for an opinion. An opinion would not be a determination of guilt or innocence. It would be an opinion based on a set of facts that we present, that we all agree to, and that Councilmember Huffington has acquiesced to, and ask if, under these facts, they may or may not find a violation could be found under Chapter 112. So it won't be a determinative factor like a complaint would, but it would give you a formal opinion on, given a set of facts, this is what may or may not be a violation of Chapter 112. And that's what we would have to agree to be bound to based on the facts that we send up. If that makes sense. So your first action tonight would be to decide on what you want to do about the written complaint.
Okay. Open the floor to comment, Mr. Vogelsang.
That was news to me as far as, I mean, it's important that we have representation when complaints are filed, but anybody anywhere can file complaints at any time. So I think the representation part, but I never knew that the cost of representation, we had a taxpayer liability of $25,000. So as far as, I think Ms. May, my discussion with her was, as a city, we can negotiate what that deductible would be for our coverage, maybe in the future for insurance coverage. So it was to not incur $25,000, but if we have a free option, I think that should be explored versus it's $25,000 of legal fees for something that is pretty straightforward. So I'm happy to seek an opinion, a formal opinion, since it's free and not costly. But that's my
just one clarification to the city attorney before I pass the floor here. Taxpayer responsibility would only be if he was found exonerated and it was a negligible submission, is that correct? Or not negligible, but...
Yes, the way that would work, and in other instances where there is no municipal liability, those who have to defend against complaints such as this pay the defense out of their pocket and come back to the city for reimbursement. In this case, you do provide that liability insurance, but with a $25,000 deductible. In that case, in order to reimburse or to pay whatever legal fees might come under the $25,000, it has to come back before this council for two findings. And that is that it was within the scope of his work and that it was for a public purpose. So that would technically be reliant upon what the Commission on Ethics came out with. In other words, if the Commission on Ethics came out with a negative finding against the council member, it would be presumably back before here to make a negative finding on the ability to expend the public funds. But should he be exonerated or find no liability under the Commission on Ethics, it would still come back before you to pay the fees based on those findings, because the paying of those fees is expenditure of public funds.
Okay.
And you are required as a council to make those two findings to spend the money.
Okay. And the contrary is true, that if you were found to be culpable, that the responsibility would be his.
That's right.
Okay. Ms. Golden?
Thank you. I have a question. Is it my understanding that there is an attorney that's representing Mr. Vogelsang now, and that there are attorney fees that are being incurred for another complaint that's...
It's our understanding that the initial complaint that was filed against Mr. Vogelsang going back to 2017 did incur legal fees, and those fees came in at approximately just under $12,000. And at this point, the invoice is hanging out there, but the city has not yet paid them. And as far as we know, it's been 2017, and I'm not sure we've actually heard anything back with regards to the disposition of that particular issue. And Anne's already left. But the defense in that one particular claim from 2 years ago wrapped up just under $12,000 of legal fees. And I'm not sure that Mr. Vogelsang was aware at the time that he may have ended up being liable for those fees.
Yeah, one of them was already dismissed, so that was probably the most legal fees, I think. The earlier one was already dismissed, and we haven't heard anything, so I don't know how that would work out. But I was never told all of this is brand new. I was just provided somebody by the insurance company, and so none of the personal liability was ever discussed. But one's already been dismissed, and then that may be the $12,000 one, I'm not sure. And then there's another one that is still in limbo. But
did we get a result back from the ethics? How can the attorney charge $12,000 without some kind of claim?
I don't know that we've seen the invoice as of yet, and I don't think an invoice has been sent to the city, because I don't think the Commission on Ethics has issued a finding as of yet. And they may be close to the end. I really don't know where that investigation is, but they have not issued anything thus. The insurance has not stopped, and we have not been issued an invoice.
Any other comments or questions from the council? Okay, then we're seeking a motion for proceed with the complaint and incur the defense fees potentially. Right? Or withdraw. Yeah, withdraw would be this. Yeah, or withdraw. So, Ms. Hoffman.
I move that we withdraw the formal complaint.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Mr. Dumont?
I think it would help to have a refresher as to what this specific complaint was for the state. Because I know we had these conversations, there were two different issues. One was violation of city charter, and the other one was violation of state. Can you refresh us as to what that violation on the state side was? I will only briefly try to summarize, and I will welcome the city manager's correction of anything that I missed today, because I did write the original memo, and I don't have it before me. Okay. As I recall, there was a question, again, as to charter, which you have already settled, as to contact with employees. The question, I think, became that his representation of two firefighters, and was that potentially a violation of 112? I think that sums it up pretty nicely. I think Councilman Ferguson agrees with my fact. That's a simplified set of the facts, but I think that is what the complaint would be about.
Okay, thank you.
There was also a second police issue. Was that included in the?
That was the portion that was a potential violation of the charter as to employee contact, and it was whether or not he was directing the work. But you as a council have already determined that did not rise to the level of a violation of the charter.
Okay. Ms. Golden?
I guess my thought was that both issues were potential violations of state ethics because it was a question of using his position to gain something for himself or someone else. That was my understanding, and that either of those situations were potential, violations.
And again, I have to revisit the complaint, and I don't have the time to get on it. If so directed, again, if you withdraw this one and we do a formal opinion, I would start with the premise of what was written in the original complaint as to the set of facts that went up for the complaint to go up for an opinion. So if that was something that needs to go up in the opinion, I agree it needs to go up.
I would think that we may want to consider tabling this then. Give you an opportunity to go back and look through the information firsthand and make a recommendation based off of. Go ahead, Ms. Goldberg, I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I would prefer that we table this to get more information before we make a decision.
Okay. Can you make that in form of a motion?
There is a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay. There is a motion and a second on the floor to withdraw, but we have a secondary, I need a motion to, pardon me? Go ahead.
If we do delay this, I think you were saying that time is kind of of the essence of how far down the line we've gone. Is this going to cause a problem with actually removing if we put it off too long? Or when do we need to get this resolved?
I'll answer your question first and then the procedural issue. But as to your question, yes, time is kind of the essence. We do need to get the ethics. The longer they go into it, the further they investigate, the more problematic it becomes to withdraw. As to the procedural issue, you have a motion and a second on, so it needs to be voted up or down before you go to a second motion.
Okay. Got a motion and a second on the floor, and the motion is to proceed, or not to proceed, but to withdraw the formal complaint. And Mr. Nichols, you have one more
second. I feel like most likely we're going to go in the other direction. If we withdraw it now, we can still proceed with the other, obviously.
That is correct. We would need to send up in writing the request to withdraw, and we have to get that through. Once it's permitted, then we can write the opinion. That wouldn't prevent me, obviously, if you directed me to draft such an opinion, starting with the facts as they were presented in the complaint. I would bring that for everyone's consensus as to those facts either way. Because, again, the standing issue to request the opinion requires Councilman Rosenstein's acquiescence in that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Golden.
Pardon me, because I'm not a legal person, but if you could help provide some clarification, if we go to an opinion, and you mentioned Mr. Vogelstein's acquiescence, I'm not sure I totally understand what you mean by that, but when we discussed this before, the importance of going to the complaint was to give Mr. Vogelstein an opportunity to provide his side so that it wasn't just, here, we want your opinion kind of thing. So Are you saying that with the opinion, he's going to have an opportunity to provide his side?
That's what I mean by his acquiescence. And in actuality, yes, and I explained that that's how it morphed from an opinion to a complaint was because of the concern that allowed Councilman Brookston to get his side of the facts. Or what we didn't realize was that was pretty much a full-on complaint with a requirement to defend against the complaint. In order to get an opinion, the only person who can actually ask for an opinion is the person affected. In other words, Councilman Brookston. However, in this case, I explained we have these set of facts, the city has their facts. The reason, again, we did it was we didn't want skewed facts either way, from the city or from Councilmember Vogelsang. We wanted to make sure those facts mattered and matched. So when I say his acquiescence is, I would bring an opinion letter, a request for an opinion letter back here, and it would require not only your concurrence, but Councilmember Vogelsang's concurrence, that those are the facts on which he is requesting an opinion. We can certainly ask for it, and I can certainly state within the letter, according to the attorney I spoke with today, that Councilmember Vogelsang has acquiesced or agrees to the facts being presented. Does that make sense? So that is what we're saying is, you're right, we were concerned about the opinion being too one-sided city and him not being able to give his facts. The facts we bring forth would have to be agreed on by him and us, and he would agree or not. That these are the facts on which you can send up to the Commission on Ethics, and I agree, these are the facts that I'm looking for an opinion on.
But the written opinion would be from him, not from us.
Well, it would be from us with the letter stating that we have the acquiescence of Councilmember Vogelsang, and we would have the minutes of the meeting at which we discussed that, and Councilmember Vogelsang would be able to be on the board.
Mr. Knight?
Thank you. Chief Parks, would you have time for the next meeting to have a summary of what the complaint is that's going to the state? Because it really does matter if it's just firefighters, or if it's firefighters as well as the police officer incident. They're two very different things. So I really need more clarity as to what's going on.
I would pull it directly from the complaint. That's where I'm going to start.
Okay, so you would be able to do it by the next meeting?
Yes.
And within that time frame, you think that would still be plenty, that would still give us the flexibility we need with the State Commission on Ethics?
I do. They have to decide, she explained very clearly we need to bifurcate, so we need the motion on whether to withdraw, and we need to get that to them. I could have something back to you by the next meeting, which would start an opinion letter based, it literally would be almost verbatim exactly what's in your complaint, only written to ask for an opinion rather than a complaint. I wouldn't make any change to the facts because I think that would be your starting point. If Councilmember Vogelsang or anyone else on this council have issue with the facts that's presented, they could bring them and we could change them, if that makes sense.
So what I'm specifically asking, if we table this, and then at the next meeting, we decide that we want to pull it, is that still enough time? So if we decide that now, then at the next meeting, can we decide that we want to redo it again?
I can only say that they take it into consideration how far they are, and I put an answer for them as to how far we've gone.
Well, I can kind of, if I may too, the complaint's been filed, so it can't be discussed, it's confidential, so you can't even bring it up. You have to pull it in order to talk about it. So, what you're talking about isn't an option, based on the complaint being filed already.
Right. But it's all a matter of public record from...
It is not a confidential ethics complaint.
Right. No, and
under investigation, it can't be discussed, so.
And I don't disagree. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what was discussed at June 17th is the public record. So I'm only speaking to what was discussed at that meeting, and it was correct. It's absolutely confidential and exempt from public record. But to start with what we started with back on June 17th, that would be what I start with, which was the discussion you had on the public record.
And if it includes, I'll just say, if it includes the police issue, I'm happy to, we'll submit everything that was discussed on June 17th. I don't, in order to get there, I think the complaint needs to be withdrawn first, and then we can have a discussion on what to put in. That's what she's talking about, have a discussion on what to put in for the formal request. I think that would be the simplest approach, and have her draft that, and then at the next meeting, we review whatever that formal request is for the Ethics Commission to consider. I think that would be the logical path.
But, but that's saying that we're going for an opinion, not for a complaint. I'm talking about the actual complaint, what we have currently. If we withdraw that, the next meeting, we decide, no, we don't want to file a complaint. Can we refile a complaint? Or do we just leave the complaint on the table, we table it until the next meeting when we have the information from the meeting of the 17th to decide whether we file the complaint or we withdraw the complaint to ask for an opinion?
He's correct that it must be withdrawn before we can ask for an opinion. If we leave it in the Commission on Ethics' hands, right now, they continue moving forward. So we have no control over what's going on with their investigation of the complaint. If the withdrawal is permitted, the complaint's dismissed, and we may proceed with an opinion if that's what council chooses. If you choose not to withdraw the complaint, they've got to move forward. The Commission on Ethics complaints require very heavy deadlines on events. I don't know exactly where they are in their process. Again, they're confidential, and I don't get involved. He has an attorney assigned to him. I'm not his attorney for that.
But to Mr. Long's point, excuse me for interrupting.
Can you refile the complaint?
We could be compared, well, if we left the complaint in place until next meeting and then made the decision to pull the complaint and submit a request for an inquiry. Why, I mean, what's the problem there, except for waiting 2 weeks?
Again, I can't say where they are in the process or what defense will be required. He may be required to reply to a complaint right now. I don't know where that stands. So I can't tell you what the this might be in that regard, because I'm not the attorney. What I can tell you is this: you can table this, obviously it's within your purview to do so, and save it for the next meeting. At what point does the Commission on Ethics consider that too far? I do not know. And you refile the complaint. I did hear that. If you decide to pull it and say, no, I want to refile this complaint. My understanding is anybody can file a complaint with the Commission on Ethics.
But wasn't it stated in the earlier opinion that we would have to write reasons for pulling the complaint?
You would need to, for good cause and the facts surrounding your reasons for wanting to pull it, would have to be right.
So we'd have to have facts as to why you pulled it and then say that those facts were wrong on them, so we're going to refile it. So those facts to pull the complaint would then be used against any refiling of...
I don't know that would be true or not. That would be I don't know why the Commission on Ethics would not look at every complaint that comes in and make the determination as to its sufficiency on its own merits. But again, I don't know. I'd have to call them to ask them whether, oh no, they're going to reject. I've never heard of a Commission on Ethics complaint being rejected, but I can certainly call to ask them that.
I think we have a lot of questions, and I think we need to have some of these questions answered before we vote on what to do with this. So we have to take care of the motions on the table right now, but I prefer to see it tabled until the next meeting, definitely at that next meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Staphopoulos.
Based on a comment that I heard earlier, and Ms. May, maybe you can clarify this. I think the question at hand was if we delayed everything to the next meeting and tried to do both a withdrawal and an agreement to resubmit on the same meeting. I think the procedural question is, if this council votes to withdraw, do we have to wait until that withdrawal is formally submitted to the Commission on Ethics and we receive notification that it has officially been withdrawn before we can then discuss the facts of creating a resubmittal for an opinion? Or can that all be done at one meeting? It's jumping out to me that I think that, you know, the withdrawal and getting notification of an official withdrawal before having that discussion lends itself to a time frame. I don't think that we're doing two actions at the same meeting, otherwise we'd be in violation. If the withdrawal is approved by council, submitted to the state, and the state says, we're not allowing you to withdraw it, it's too far into the process. And at that point, we've already had a discussion about facts when it hasn't officially been withdrawn.
That certainly would be the normal route, and I would agree with you. The wrinkle here is on June 17th, we put a city memo that laid out the facts. And so it's already a matter of public record. Now, if those facts were to differ to something else that is confidential, then yes, I'd agree. But I believe the facts, and I'm looking at Councilmember Robertson to see if he disagrees with me at all, those facts were put forth in the city memo,
Correct.
and they are public record.
Mr. Nichols?
I just know when we originally voted to escalate this for a complaint, that I never would have voted if I knew the city would have been, had exposure to $25,000, or Mr. Vogelsang would have had exposure to that, and I think we would have gone with the opinion option either way.
Mr. Vogelsang?
And that's what I would add too. When we had this discussion, I agreed to do the complaint. That was so I would have an opportunity to be heard. None of the other issues, and that's what everybody, at least my colleagues up here, I thought, looking out for my interest, having an opportunity for me to be heard, and no liability, potential liability, either personally or on the fact of the city. So I have no idea why it should even be a question, based on all of our previous discussions, to put forth a formal request that's free and suffers no personal potential liability to me or to the city, and has the same goals that we all talked about and agreed to at our previous council meeting. So to change would really be troubling for me and you guys in the discussions that we collectively had up here in me agreeing to do the complaint in the first place.
Okay. Cue board's clear. Any other comments or questions before we take the vote? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Abstain.
Councilmember Dumont?
No.
Councilmember Golding?
No.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yeah.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
No. Motion fails, and at this point, we have a motion. Ms. Golden?
Motion to table. Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to table. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
No.
Councilmember Nichols?
No.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Abstain.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. So the motion passes, motion carries for tabling till the next meeting. And then the next meeting, what we'd like to do is get anything that's public record, summaries. And I'd also like to suggest that we prepare both a retraction and an inquiry at the same time, so that we'd be prepared to move forward with both if necessary. Yes, a draft withdrawal and also a draft, thank you, request for opinion. Okay. Moving on, resolution, Madam Clerk, please read resolution number 2038-2019 by title only, please.
A resolution of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, providing conditional authorization to commit financially to a specified portion of the solar energy acquired by the Florida Municipal Power Agency in the event the Florida Municipal Power Agency acquires such solar energy, providing conditional authorization to commit to being bound by Section 10 of Rate Schedule B1 of the All Requirements Power Supply Contract, designating authorized officers, approving and taking certain other actions, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
I move that we adopt resolution number 2038-2019 to authorize Beaches Energy to purchase 5 megawatts via power purchase agreement through the Florida Municipal Power Agency.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Mr. Stephanopoulos.
As this item states, it's for the consideration of purchasing an additional 5 megawatts of solar energy power. And here to speak on it is Beaches Energy Director Alan Putnam.
Alan Putnam, Director of Beaches Energy. I came to you back in June to ask for the purchase of 10 megawatts of solar, additional solar, which would put us at 20 megawatts. Since that time, our negotiations have turned up prices actually much lower than what we expected. This allows us to buy an additional 5 megawatts for the same price. It would cost us for 10 megawatts. So it's still under my threshold at 20% of where I want to be for our system. And of course, it's clean energy. Represents approximately 13,000 residential homes of what we'll have with 25 total megawatts. So it's a pretty significant portion. It's also an excellent hedge against natural gas prices increasing.
So you said the total is 25 now?
Would be with this file would be 25 megawatts, which represents about 17% of our average monthly consumption.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And now we're going to go ahead and alter the agenda. We're going to move to tab C in your book. And to the audience out there, this is a short-term rental issue. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please read ordinance number 2019-8118, first reading, public hearing by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 34, Land Development Code, Article 8, Site Development Standards, Division 2, Supplemental Standards, creating a new section 34-411, short-term vacation rentals, as authorized by Chapter 163.3202 Florida statutes, amending Chapter 34 Land Development Code, Article 4 Definitions, providing definitions, amending Chapter 34 Land Development Code, Article 7 Zoning Districts, Division 2 Zoning Districts, Section 34-336, Residential, Single Family RS1, Section 34-337, Residential, Single Family RS2, Section 34-338, Residential, Single Family RS3, Section 34-339, Residential Multifamily RM1, Section 34-340, Residential Multifamily RM2, Section 34341, Commercial Professional Office CPO, Section 34342, Commercial Limited C1, Section 34-343, Commercial General C2, Section 34-345, Central Business District CBD, providing that short-term vacation rentals are a permitted use, providing for findings, providing for severability, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, this ordinance is for the amendment of the Land Development Code. It's before the council for a public hearing and consideration under its first reading. Under the laws of the state of Florida, an ordinance which changes the actual list of permitted, conditional, or prohibited uses within a zoning category, or which otherwise changes the text of the Land Development Code, is a quasi-legislative proceeding. A quasi-legislative proceeding means that the governing body is acting in its rulemaking capacity. It is the duty of the council to arrive at sound decisions regardless of the use of property within the city. This includes receiving citizen input regarding the proposed uses within a zoning category. The application has been reviewed by the staff and the Planning Commission for consistency with other portions of the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. The council may hear from all interested parties in the legislative determination of an amendment to the text of the Land Development Code. The council's decision on a text amendment application is based on criteria set forth in section 34-211 of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy of the criteria. I'll now open the public hearing for ordinance number 2019-8118. Okay, first we're going to Let's see. I've got several cards. I'm just going to start with the cards, the people who'd like to speak. Okay, starting with Mr. Robert Grovestein, is that correct? Robert, if you come forward, give your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
I'm Robert Grobenstein. I live at 3007 Ocean Drive, Jacksonville Beach. I need a point of clarification on this ordinance. This is the first reading. Is it still open for changes, or are we going to vote it up or down tonight?
We can modify it after the first reading and then bring it to the second reading.
Okay. My problem with it is one section of it on the parking. There's a lot of older homes in Jacksonville Beach that have single garages and single driveways. Now, if you have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, short-term rental, and there's not enough room for them, I would like to have the people that rent the place to be allowed to park on the city easement, as we've been doing for decades here in Jacksonville Beach. People parking on the city easement. And that's the problem with these older houses. There's not enough space in the driveways to park all the cars. So I would ask that you make that, give them permission temporarily, if needed, to park on the city easement in front of the house. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grobenstein. Appreciate it. Evan Greenfield. Evan, if you come forward and give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Hi, my name is Evan Greenfield. I live at 1800 The Greens Way. Mayor and Council, after listening closely to both sides, I believe major issues that the proposed ordinance is trying to address include violations of noise ordinance, violations of trash ordinance, and violations of parking ordinance. It is my understanding that these are already rules on the books that address 3 issues. So why is it that we need more regulations when proper enforcement of the current regulations will do? Instead of debating over new rules such as number of total occupants, if children should count towards total occupancy, and if short-term rental property owners should register both with the City of Jacksonville Beach and with the City of Jacksonville, I believe that we should enforce the current ordinances that make minor adjustments to them as needed, not completely overhaul our current rules. I do believe that the city should be paid its pet tax. I also believe that residents, both long-term and short-term, should enjoy peaceful and safe enjoyment of their property. I don't believe that we should spend all the tax dollars generated by short-term rentals on simply enforcing an overbearing proposed ordinance. And instead, we should do a lot of good with the new tax revenues that we're going to receive. Shifting gears, we heard from the police chief during the planning meeting, who stated that the department recently took measures to specifically track and report on the few short-term rental properties that are causing the majority of the problems. I greatly thank the chief and the entire police department for proactively implementing new processes so we may adequately measure the problem. Please also note that the chief stated that the police department was not going to act as code enforcement for anything that wasn't a civil or criminal dispute. Can anyone inform us, the public, regarding how many police calls were made regarding excess noise calls in residential areas, or how many code enforcement tickets were administered regarding violations of trash or violations of parking? Out of all these violations, how many occurred in short-term rentals? I understand that question might be difficult to answer because there are only a handful of short-term rentals registered with the City of Jacksonville Beach. Let's start by making registration of rental property easy. Then let's continue to accurately measure the problem and enforce our current rules. Should we find that a material problem exists, we can then adopt new regulations to properly address specific problems. It is my belief that we have not accurately quantified the problem. If the old rules can't be enforced, why will the new rules? We have an enforcement problem. and I ask that you vote no on this proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield, appreciate it. Sean Shapiro. Sean, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Sean Shapiro, 1745 Pulliam Street. So I just became a neighbor of a 13-person occupancy Airbnb that was just sold in the past few months. Sold to an investor for cash. They started renting it out in the past 4 weeks or so, I would say. It's a 5-bedroom house. It's about 2,500 square feet. My concern with it is that if you look at the landscape of where we're currently at with 2,500 square foot houses, I would assume it's probably one of the only ones that actually houses 13 people continuously. And that's going to be allowed per this new ordinance for these short-term rentals. The problem with having 13 people in a single house is that the decibel level for the noise ordinance after hours, after 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, depending on the day of the week, 65 decibels. So 65 decibels for 13 people is basically surpassed on a normal conversation between 13 people anywhere outside of the home. That's a major concern for me, considering last night I had to make a call, formal complaint, because there was people outside at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're having normal conversations, but their decibel levels are probably exceeding 90, 100 decibels when there's complete silence on a Sunday night. So having that many people in these single-family homes, you're going to find more and more investors that are going to be tearing down houses, building infills, tiny bedrooms, just meeting these requirements to be able to maximize bedrooms, maximize these high teen occupancies up to 16 people supposedly, and it's going to cause major issues long-term for our community. It's just natural that people that are coming to stay in our city for a few days, they're not really respectful of long-term ramifications of bothering people around them. So if they're there for 3 days and they bother you, they think that you're going to get over it. Well, next weekend it's another 13 people, and those people are going to be aggravating the community with high decibel levels. So, like the gentleman before me said, it's really about enforcing currently what we have with our noise complaints and trash and all those kind of issues. And I think we really have to wrap our minds around how we're going to solve that and what resources we can actually deploy financially from the city, from the police department to be able to regulate this. I think we're going to have a major issue on our hands. If you look at cities like Nashville, perfect example of communities that have been completely taken over by short-term rentals and what it can do to the market and the noise pollution that it creates for the residents of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro. Mike Vinci. Mike, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Mike Vinci, 214 Tallwood Road, Jacksonville Beach. The question I have, or concern that I have regarding the new ordinances is the occupancy. If Ms. May might be able to clarify it. I think what was discussed was whatever the maximum occupancy we determined is that is the most people that can be in there at any given time, whether they're staying in the home or they're a guest. And that is a little bit concerning if one of my homes is very common for mayor patients to stay in. And so if they have a guest come there and they're already maxed out, then somebody has to leave the room. If a nurse comes, then somebody has to leave the house because they're already over their limit. If you have 2 families that are renting a condo and they want to go over and have lunch at one of the condos, we have to tell them no, it's against the law. You have to go out to eat. And so I want some clarification. I'm fine with the occupancy, but I think it needs to be maybe from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. when people are staying the night, but during the day, then it does not apply. And so I appreciate y'all considering that.
Thank you, sir. And just for procedural perspective, she'll be answering your questions here shortly when she responds. We'll have a period where she responds, as the same with the planning director. Wally Sears. Mr. Sears, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
I'm Wally Sears, 807 2nd Street South, Jacksonville Beach. I'm talking about against these restrictive rules that you want to place on Airbnbs and short-term rentals. I was reading through it the way it states now. There's like 5 pieces of paper. I got to go out and get licenses and whatever they are. That's burdensome on me. I think that the reason this whole thing came up is because of the parking and the noise, and that's simply an enforcement problem, like these other people have said. Just enforce what's on the books now. Same thing with the turtle complaints, the lights. You guys aren't enforcing what's on the books. This whole thing would go away if you just went out there and shut people down that are too loud, give them a ticket when there's too many cars. It's no big deal. It's an easy fix. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Janelle Wilson. Janelle, if you come forward and give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Janelle Wilson, 2014 South Oceanfront Drive, and also the owner of All South Realty, and have been at that location at 3090 South 3rd Street for 31 years this month. So, and as you all know already, that I'm opposed to this ordinance, and it's been stated, I think we have laws on the books that address the issues that people have had with this. We need to enforce these ordinances we already have. And also, this will very negatively affect my business that I've been doing for so many years. And since I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to hit the points of things that I'd like to, first of all, commend you for making some good changes to the ordinance, but there's still a few more that I think need to be made. And I'll go over them quickly. First of all, the whereases are still on there, and they're very negative, they're very slanted. I think those need to be reviewed.
Repeat that, Janelle.
The whereas clauses need to be readdressed, because a lot of those are opinions, not fact. Secondly, the bedroom definitions, there's some issues with that. A lot of the older houses, you have to go through one room to get to another room, and that's burdensome on older properties. I know a couple of them now that do not meet that requirement for a bedroom. And the other thing about the bedrooms is the fact that you can't count a den or a sunroom or as a bedroom. A lot of people that live there permanently have those type of bedrooms. I'm talking about our residents and long-term tenants. And the max occupancy, we need to define that. As to the age restrictions, is it a 6-month-old baby, is that counted as one of the occupants for the 2 persons per bedroom? And I think the Planning Commission had also recommended 2 per bedroom plus 2 more. And I think you got that recommendation. The parking standards, and that's been addressed to some extent, but also, again, what's the age limit for those to count as a person? Because you say, it says that there has to be a parking spot for every 3 people, or 1 or 3 people. It's a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old counted as a person for that count for parking requirements. And also, parking requirements are discriminatory in this ordinance because you're restricting people that do the short-term rentals and holding them to standards that other people that live in the community permanently and long-term do not have to abide by, as you stated earlier also. The inspections, I would like to see an affidavit signed or given for the property owner saying that they meet the requirements, because I think inspections can be a problem because we've got a lot of properties that would have to be inspected. And my time's running out, but the other thing is any violations, I think it's restricted. 30 days may not be enough time to correct the violation or the deficiency. And skipping over a couple. The evacuation maps for 3-story buildings, I think that is an undue burden because a lot of these older townhomes, there's only one stairwell going in and out, and it's very obvious where the stairs are. I think this was designed more for a hotel or a large condominium complex. So I'd like to see that deleted. And again, I'm opposed to the ordinance, but if you're going to do something, I'd like to see some of these changes made. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, I've got a few cards here from people who oppose but don't want to speak. Got Katie Hayes from Jacks Beach, William Gilbert, also from Jacks Beach, Connie Gilbert from Jacks Beach, Audrey Lackey, Jacks Beach, and Tess Walter from Jacks Beach. Okay, next, Mr. Steve Cooper. Steve, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Sure. My name is Steve Cooper. I live at 534 14th Avenue South, Jacks Beach. I first want to thank the council for taking this up. I support the ordinance. I've had communication with Ms. Golding, and she's been helpful in helping me understand the ordinance. And I commend the city attorney for writing a very detailed and well-crafted ordinance. I'm here with a couple of my neighbors tonight. We live in the 500 block of 14th Avenue South. And out of the 12 houses there, 2 are permanent short-term rentals. And we're having issues with both. I want to address what many people have said, that this is an enforcement issue and we don't need this ordinance. With that, under that guideline, the enforcement is visited on the neighbors who live near these short-term rentals. The fact is, short-term rentals generate more noise, more parking problems, more trash collection problems than long-term residents do. And while it would be nice if we could push those issues under the rug, that isn't a responsible way to approach this issue. I think the increase in short-term rentals in Jacksonville Beach is an existential threat to the character of the city, and I encourage you to consider the meaning of that in the depth of the problem. Specifically, I mentioned enforcement. Neighbors who move into a residential neighborhood have a reasonable expectation that that is a residential neighborhood, not a residential neighborhood with many hotels dispersed throughout it. And the noise problems and parking problems should not be visited repeatedly on those long-term residents. I can say without hesitation, I would not have moved to Jacksonville Beach 3 years ago if I had known that I would be living next to an Airbnb. And I think you'll find more and more people like me. I moved from Naples. I love Jacksonville Beach a whole lot more than Naples, but I would have chosen a different community had I known. Or I would have moved into an HOA, which can still enforce their rules. I only have 20 seconds left. You have a paper in front of you of the issues. I do have questions about the size of the bedroom. It seems awfully small. I worry about investors subdividing bedrooms, putting a partition between the 2 bedrooms. So I would encourage you to consider a definition of a bedroom that would at least try to prevent some of that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Shelby Smith. Shelby, if you come forward and give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, my name is Shelby Smith. I live at 523 14th Avenue South. As Steve was saying, we have 12 houses on our block, 6 on each side. We have 2 B&Bs, and that's no fun. They're very popular, and they get rented every single week. It is noise problems, it's trash problems, it's parking problems. Same thing you've heard from everybody. And it comes down to the fact that these things are being advertised to people that have vacation parties coming in, they have graduation parties, they have wedding parties, and you talk about a maximum occupancy, let's say 16 people, you get a wedding party in there, you got 45 people, and that's for a whole day. They may not stay the night, but that's a whole day. It's a big giant party, and this happens probably once or twice a month for each one. I think you're off a little bit on the size of the bedrooms, and to me the occupancy rates are a little high also. I think maybe a 10-person per bedroom per house is fine. Because like I said, these things get out of hand. The trash is a problem because most of the places don't have enough garbage containers, so they just pile the trash up outside. And it's an ongoing problem. So I hope you either drastically amend what you've got in front of you or vote no on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Eileen Ward. Eileen, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Eileen Ward. I live at 529 14th Avenue South. And we're kind of, 14th Avenue is kind of the wild, wild west of the future for VRBOs in Jax Beach, because we do have one of the normal 1,700 square feet, have 1,600 square feet, 1,700 square foot houses that's advertised for 10 people, and then another larger 2,600 square foot house that's advertised for 14 people. Pretty normal. The one has a pool, lots of noise, lots of late nights. There's a school child lives next door. It's really noisy. And we're also kind of overloaded. I agree with the code enforcement. 14th Avenue is kind of famous for one little corner where we have the used car and used boat parking lot on 9th and 14th, and then the slogan fence on 9th and 14th, which uses a lot of code enforcement and police time, I think. I'm wondering, it's my understanding that the state passed a law that does not permit us to deny VRBOs and short-term rentals. So we are forced to have some sort of a regulation on VRBOs and short-term rentals if we want to have any regulation. As I said, it is a Wild West. I object to the 7 by 10 foot bedroom size. I object to the non-definition of a closet. I can take my 24-foot garage workroom and turn it into 3 additional bedrooms, stick another window in, and I could be a 6-bedroom, 3-bath house. I can therefore have, let's see, what did the numbers show? I can have 11, given 150 square feet per person. I can rent that out for 11 people in that little 1,600-foot house. If you change it to 200 square foot per person, and it's a 6-bedroom, I can have a maximum of 8 people. And any builder that buys that house is either going to rip it down like they did across the street and put 2 mini mansions in at 2,600 with a lot variances to get the larger square footage, and put, as currently the one across the street from me is advertised for 15, and they have an 8 by 10 foot alcove that's an office they advertise that will sleep 4 with 2 queen mattresses. And that's what's there every week, all the time. So I really appreciate you all going to bat for us to try and get the Wild West controlled, but I think it needs a little more delicate control as per all the items that the 3 of us put on the sheet we have in front of you, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor. For those of you that are submitting cards late, I'm going to put those aside, and we're going to give everybody an opportunity that wants to come up and speak without cards to come up. I'm just going to keep the flow going here. Tony Kumark. Tony, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Hello, I'm Tony Komarek. I live at 533 11th Avenue South, and I'm surprised the 14th Avenue South people are here with me as well. Last Thursday, I took off of work. I was driving down my street, the VRBO down my street with a swimming pool, 6 cars in front of the house. 6 cars. You know, I'm getting sick and tired of them tearing down the single-family houses and putting in rentals for transients, people who don't care about Jacksonville Beach college students, and the vacation rentals. And remember, this is all about home rule. If we don't do something now, the state of Florida may prevent us putting in any type of rules in here. Just like Ms. Bay stated, when we first looked at this, there was only 8 properties registered by the state of Florida as vacation rentals. We need to hold a business accountable when you're running a business in a neighborhood. Now, there's about 3 or 4 things they put in there that they want the planning commission. One is the minimum occupancy, 2 per bedroom, plus 2, which is fair. A 4-bedroom house right next to me, that's 8 people. When you consider 2 per bedroom, that's 8 plus 2, that's 10. So really, the occupancy, there's no problem with that. Parking requirements. People complain about parking requirements east of 3rd Street because some of the rentals, short-term rentals east of 3rd Street, they don't have driveways. They park in the alley and grass. That's why there's a parking issue there. And then, let's see. Well, anyways, all the rules that they posted there are fair. I do not suggest changing any one of them. And also the occupancy. Do not add children, because I just gave you the example for a 4-bedroom, which is 10 people. My question is, what is your vision of Jacksonville Beach? Is it going to be like Daytona Beach with one big commercial area? Or you're going to look out for the residents? Short-term rentals are a business. Let's make them follow the rules. We have rules on the books, but they're not following it. We need a designated person who's responsible for the property, that when there is an issue, the police know who to go to. If you just give a ticket to a person in North Carolina, give the next one to the one in Georgia, you give the next one to someone, from another state, it doesn't do any good. You have to make the property owner responsible. Thank you.
Lyle Ramon, is that correct?
Raymond.
Ramon? Oh, wow.
Yes. Lyle Raymond, 91 19th Avenue North, Jacksonville Beach. I've heard most of this before, and I don't want to repeat all of it. I've got 2 VRBOs near me. One is 4 houses away. I've watched them park in the bike zone repeatedly. They park on the sidewalks. When they have party too loud at night, the neighbors have called the owner says, it's not my problem, call the police. That's one thing that I like about the new ordinance. It's going to lay some of the responsibility on the owner, not on the police department to take care of it all. Another thing which we have right now, which has been repeated, they're not registered. We have, some people say 480 rentals in town, some say 500, some say 5. I know at least 6 or 10 near me. We don't have any accountability. Last year I checked on some of them. I looked to see the homestead exemptions. They have homestead exemptions on the properties. Yet they're listed as VRBOs. We're not policing them. We have to take care of that. Another thing that we have with this new ordinance, which I think is very important, is these people are representing Jacksonville Beach. We're advertising nationally and internationally. So when we get a few in here that are bad apples, and they get into a place that's not as advertised, the reflection is not on the owner. It's not on Airbnb, it's on Jacksonville Beach. So we need some way to control that, to have our inspections, make them fire safe, and some way to make the rules followed in the local areas. I got other things, but we've got enough people here right now, so those are my 2 bits. Thank you.
Thanks, Lyle. Good to see you. Ron Taylor. Ron, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Ron Taylor, 360 13th Avenue North for the last 31 years. I am also a realtor, so I take the other position. I've gotten all the talking points emailed me to, from the Realtors Association, everybody. The one word that they kept saying was, this is onerous. I looked it up. Thought I knew what it was, so I just wanted to be sure. Involving an amount of effort and difficulty that is oppressively burdensome. I don't see anything in the ordinance that's oppressive at all. Sure, you might have to get some licenses and you might have to do some paperwork for accountability, but any business has to do that. I don't care what your business is. You have to get permits. I do believe the bedroom size is too small. I think that we need more square footage. And I think a lot of this goes to people talking about noise and parking and things like that. But as I spoke earlier today, a lot of it that has nothing to do with that. It's the taxing of the city. It's the amount of effort that our police force has to do. It's amount of firefighters, rescue personnel, hospitals. It's everything that these additional people that are outside what would normally be in one of these residential neighborhoods. They're not going to have 16 people in a residential home. And it taxes the city's capacity to serve the residents that live here when you put too many people in the residential areas. And I just think, again, it goes to what can our city sustain? We quickly voted down the high-rises that were going up because we didn't want to be Miami Beach. We didn't want to be Daytona Beach. We wanted to be a residential community. And I know that the state doesn't allow us to completely ban these things, but we can increase the size to a normal bedroom size. What would a person purchase? Would a person purchase a 7 by 10 bedroom, size bedroom? I mean, again, I've been doing real estate for 15 years. I get people in a 10 by 10 room and they're going, wow, these things are really small. And so I think it should just be common sense that a bedroom should be a bedroom. It should be what you would buy, what you would provide for your child or somebody. You know, how big is big enough? But again, I don't think anything in here is oppressive, and I commend you all for regulating this, and I don't think it's it should be a problem. I just think it's actually pretty generous, so thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Mr. Taylor. Joe Santa Maria. Joe, if you come forward, give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Joe Santa Maria, 620 11th Ave South. Actually, one of the Airbnbs I wasn't going to talk about across the street was already mentioned with issues, but what I'd like to see actually is this ordinance actually expanded to owner-occupied units. The 3-bedroom house next to me has been converted into an owner-occupied area, 2-bedroom apartment. This unit does not respect the setbacks, where we have noise and people invading our backyard, poking through our fence, looking at us sitting on our porch. As of right now, I will say we are working with the neighbor and the unit manager to rectify these issues, but this is going back and forth for 6 months. During discussion today with the manager, he mentioned that we live at the beach and should expect noise. This type of conversion of a 3-bedroom house into a 2-bedroom apartment will lower property values, generate extra traffic in our already crowded streets. Thank you for your time and consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Jim Sorrell. Jim, if you can come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Jim Sorrell, 1410 Pinewood Road, Jacksonville Beach. This issue is primarily for the quality of life for the residents of Jacksonville Beach, and I'm in full favor of it, and I consider it a very lenient ordinance because of the fact that this is actually putting very few restrictions or regulations on a commercial enterprise. And this is definitely a commercial enterprise, and I'll use the word hotel because it's been recognized by the Planning Commission when Dolphin Depot went in. They recognized half their units as being hotel units because they're 6-month or less leases. So as a hotel, if you look at all these regulations here, it's very lenient. And the main thing is this, is that we need this because we have no other way to enforce the problems that we have now without this. So if you pass this, it will give us a chance to enforce the bad apples and also allow the good people out there to operate a good operation. But just remember, this is not putting anything on the people of ownership. This is a commercial enterprise, and us residents would like a better quality of life, which now is being impeded by their tenants. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Michael Barker. Michael, if you come forward and give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Michael Barker, 213 Tallwood Road, Jacks Beach. I spoke a couple months ago, for the amount of people. You know, when you have 10, 12, 14 people, you literally have about 600 per unit coming to your neighborhood that you've never had before. The parking, everything you're doing, I totally agree with. It's as much as you can do to help us, that would be great, because it's annoying to me that I've lived here for almost 40 years, built this house 23 years ago, dead-end cul-de-sac, and now it's just everything everybody else has said is what's going on. So it's amazing to me that we don't have more say in this. My question, short-term rental is supposed to be a week. Is that not right? Has to be a full week?
One day.
Well, it says short-term rental in
We'll
the
have that
cities,
answer for you.
in the cities meeting, nobody, I don't know if anybody knew that, but bottom line, it's considered a week. And what's happening is, anything, we'll use an example, a weekend is 2 days. So that's like a hotel. So a short-term rental, if you look up the definition, is 1 week. My neighbor, which spoke tonight, every 3 days, we get new people. So that 600 people figure, which I can address that down the road or call or whatever, so I don't have a lot of time to give you the figures now. But if you do 3 days, then you have up to 1,200 people staying in your street. I've got 17 homes. Everybody's against it. How many short-term rentals can be on a street with 17 homes? If there's 6 or 8, then we literally have up to 4,000 or 5,000 people coming up and down our street. And as bad as the world is, as bad as it's been the last week with everything going on, when you have 1,000 or 5,000 people, you're going to get a bad apple. And it's just, it's very unnerving to live in the street. So the neighbor has five rooms, so that's 10 people. Am I right on that? He's advertising it for 12. And the 150, whichever's less. So I'm taking the 10, so it should be advertised as 10, not 12. We got to call it. It's dead in cul-de-sac, but we have a median out in front. They park anywhere near that, and they all come on my side. I have a heavily landscaped yard, almost been ran over several times, which I could probably do less landscaping, but the problem is they always come on my side. So now parking on the street is very important to me. At least we've got some headway, because he's got eight people. The record's 8 or 9 people in his circle driveway. So yes, they can park there. They can't tuck. Why should we have to put up with all the parking? The average home size nationwide is 2.1. Jacksonville Beach is 2.5. To have 10 or 12 people staying every week, week in, week out, is totally annoying. And if we have any more on our street, it's going to be even worse. The cops, they have to come about every week or two for the loudness, so they're again the burden on the city. Didn't bring my glasses, so that was a screw up. It's so much more profitable just to rent your house out. You can really make 60 to 90 grand a year on our neighborhood. So
easy to write up.
So many people that could be doing that. I think I'm pretty much covered it. But is there going to be a law of how many homes you can have per every 3 or 4 homes?
We'll address questions. This is a procedural process, so let's get to that.
Well, I understand. This is things you need to consider, because if you have 17 homes, should every 3 or 4 homes only allow 1 rental? I mean, otherwise the whole street could be rentals. And Atlantic Beach has a minimum of 3 months. Neptune Beach has a month. Makes me want to go move to Marsh Landing or somewhere besides Jackson.
Time's up.
Thank you. Okay, I think there were a couple of cards that came in. I'm just going to go ahead and open the floor to others who want to make comments. Please come up one at a time and give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I submitted a card before the meeting started.
For what?
I submitted a card before the meeting.
Okay, well, come on up. Got about 65 cards up here, so
Okay.
I might have gotten this place. I need you to start with your name and address, please.
Okay, and I also gave you a packet.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Erin Morris Sandoval. I live at 1300 Florida Boulevard, Neptune Beach. My spouse and I own property at 208 and 210 7th Avenue South in Jacksonville Beach, and we purchased the property in 2012 as our primary residence. We lived there till mid-2014, at which time we started renting out all 4 apartments as vacation rentals. We have all the proper licenses to operate our rentals from the state, from the county, and the city of Jacksonville Beach. We're one of the 8 holders of the Jacksonville Beach local business tax receipt that the city attorney mentioned to you before. Since we started renting out our apartments as vacation rentals, we paid almost $150,000 in sales, tourism, and property tax. I'm putting this out to demonstrate that we're operating legally. I testified at the Planning Commission meeting about the proposed occupancy and parking requirements in this ordinance and demonstrated that these provisions as written would cause real and quantifiable harm to my vacation rentals. I emailed you my testimony and a handout, and I also provided a copy of that to you. I'm not going to speak on that because I only have 2 minutes left, so it's in your handout. I have a sound and actionable suggestion to this council. First, table this ordinance for 90 days. Second, take the list of 47, not 8, but 47 short-term rentals in Jacksonville Beach that are licensed by the State Department of Business and Professional Relations and send delinquency notices to all the licensees who have not filed their local business tax receipt. The DBPR licensing information is a public record and easily attainable online. I found it, that's why I know there's 47. Third, take the list of short-term rentals that Heather Ireland referred to in the last Planning Commission meeting. She had disclosed that the city used a third-party company to stock short-term rentals online to compile a list of their addresses. I believe the list has several hundred properties on it. Send all those property owners delinquency notices as well. Per Florida Statute 205.194, these properties will be required to obtain the state license from the DBPR and provide proof of licensure when they submit their application for the local business tax receipt. For any short-term rental owner or operator that doesn't comply with this, City Code 15-7 already allows the city to fine them up to $250. Furthermore, Section 15-12 criminalizes noncompliance by making it a misdemeanor to conduct business in the city without a local business tax receipt. So the current regulation most definitely already has teeth and is enforceable. After 90 days, it is determined that the city staff has the capacity to enforce this requirement that's already on the books and not being enforced, and that this process uncovers a need for additional licensure or registration, then bring this ordinance back up for consideration. Use the tools you have first. One other thing to consider, not a single person who spoke tonight or in the history of this issue, or to the city clerk, or to the police about short-term rentals in the neighborhood has filed a complaint with the state. Not a single one of the people that came here to talk to you tonight has done that. The DBPR investigates short-term rentals on a complaint-only basis and publishes all this information online. They even investigate complaints of unlicensed activity. Not a single complaint has been filed in the last 3 years against a vacation rental in Jacksonville Beach. Again, let's use the mechanisms we already have before passing new ordinances. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else who has not submitted a card or maybe has and we haven't called you, come on up, give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Justin Rawls. I live at 403 12th Avenue South. As you can hear, a lot of my neighbors have clear issues with the Airbnb and short-term rental issue. I just hope you guys take that into consideration when you do finalize and put through the codes. And also, if you could consider maybe taking some of the money you're going to collect through tax revenue generated from that and putting on a full-time officer dedicated towards code enforcement that could alleviate issues related to short-term rental, noise issues, and other issues that are clearly sometimes from what I've heard from other residents getting swept under the rug or not addressed properly. I think that would help address a lot of people's issues with regard to the whole community and especially this issue. And if that could be something that could be potentially put into the works with this money that would be generated, I think that would do a lot to help a lot of these people out. Just a quick thought.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anyone else? Sir, if you start with your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Steve Milo, 202 21st Avenue. We're familiar with vacation rentals. My company manages 1,800 vacation rentals, over 1,000 in the state of Florida. We manage in almost 20 counties, numerous cities. I understand that this is a complicated issue. I understand it's complicated with shared transportation as well. Alternative accommodations are a $200 billion industry. It's only going to increase. I understand that there are people in this exhibit hall that do not like short-term rentals, but the people that are not here, the ones who cannot make it, in many cases are investors who make economic-based expectations for these properties and have rights as well, even though they can't be here, even though they don't have the opportunity to speak to you personally. So I'm here as a representative, as a property manager, to talk about what is fair and what is reasonable. The entire reason why home rule was taken away from cities like Jacksonville Beach is because cities abused the power. That's why the state passed 2011 law and 2014 amendment that had prohibited cities from regulating vacation rentals in terms of banning frequency, duration, or banning them outright. There are items within this law that I believe will be challenged and would allow an overturn. I would recommend carefully that the city attorney in particular review the parking provision. I think that this could be challenged. I also believe anything that suspends the license can be challenged. If the goal is to create something that's reasonable and fair, you will find that property managers like myself, who operate in close to 20 counties, cities in Florida, will not challenge this. We want to work with cities. We want there to be reasonable regulations. We like for standards. We think standards help elevate the industry. If it is unreasonable, we will gather the resources to fight. We have powerful allies like Airbnb, like Expedia, like Booking.com, who have large war chests. I've been involved in 2 litigations with the City of Venice and with the County of Flagler. In both cases, ultimately settlement. It's not the way to go. The best way is to review this carefully, to be reasonable and be fair. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am, you can start with the name and address. We'll give you 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Susan Castellanos. I have property at 3490 Ocean Drive South. It's been in my family since 1965, and I just have the great honor of inheriting it. I absolutely agree on registering short-term rentals. It's definitely, you need to have a responsible party for these bad apples that are causing all these problems. But it seems like there's just a few bad apples for all those properties out there. And if you address the few bad apples, you won't have problems. I'm doing everything I can on my property to make sure that before I start becoming a short-term rental, I am in compliance. I've gone out, got a survey, gone out, and I filed for a variance to put pavers in to make sure that I have the car parking on site. Because I currently have terrible gravel. I'm doing renovations, making my house improved and beautiful neighborhood. And what's paying for that is these short-term rentals that I'm hoping to do in the house. And so I'm hoping to improve my part of the neighborhood by improving my property. One thing to note is that Orlando only charges $275 for the start and $125 a year for their fees. $500 and $250 is too high. With 500 rentals, that is $250,000 that the city would be collecting, and that seems a bit exorbitant to put and a burden to put on these owners. So I'd just like you to request to review that part of it. I do agree with the occupancy, and I would like some clarification on people with his children, or what exactly defines a closet. Does it need to be, can it be an armoire, or does it have to be in there as a permanent fixture? Just definitely need some clarification on some of the points. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi there. If you start with your name and address, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Thanks, I'll be quick. I'm Paulette Waterman. I live at 4067 America Avenue in Jacksonville Beach. I am a partial owner of a house that we inherited with my sisters. That house we inherited and we turned into a short-term rental, and it is going very well for us. It is our family home. We grew up there. I was born here. I was raised here, and I am still raising my own family here. I just wanted to say we spent the last 30 days living back and residing back in our short-term rental, which is why we did what we did. We're responsible, we're licensed, we're in compliance. We had a wonderful time as a family for an entire month. I have siblings that live out of town. The neighbors stopped us, they welcomed us back. They had nothing but positive to say back to us about the short-term rental in the residential neighborhood. My uncle lives across the street. My neighbors have been my neighbors since I was a child. I care deeply for these people, and I do not intend or wish for any of their regular day-to-day life to be disturbed. I currently have guests in our home right now from Virginia, and I hope that they're enjoying their time in Jacksonville Beach. Just want to say that, you know, it's hard as an owner as an inheritance. You inherit a house and it's your family home, and you want to be responsible with it, and you want to honor your parents. And that's what we're doing. We're not out to make any more money than just to pay for the insurance and the property insurance and the property taxes. I don't know how to do that any other way. So I want to be able to have access to the home I grew up in, and so I would like these conversations to continue until we can figure out what is good for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else going once? Going twice? Floor is closed for public comment. Thank you all for your thoughtful comments. Okay, before requesting a motion on this ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record both the names and the persons and the substance of any ex parte communication regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an equal interest in this decision, which occurred outside the public hearing process. I've got two by name that I remember, and it's Janelle, who's against, and Matt Lane, who's for. Other than that, I think I got probably 6 emails from people, I'm sorry, I don't remember their names, but they were equally split between pro and con. So, Mr. Nichols?
I've had substantial ex parte communication with people on both sides of the issue. I've spoken with Janelle, and I will create an extra list and insert that in the record. But I've had, like I said, on both sides of the issue, and I'll submit a list.
Thank you, sir. And before I'm going to interrupt Mr. Mott, all my emails are online on the website too, so if you're interested to see who the emails were from me, you can go to the website and pull up my emails. Go ahead.
I think I've received at least 30 or 40 emails on both sides of the issue.
Okay. Mr. Mott?
I've received numerous emails on both sides of the issue. I have a list, and I'll file them for the record if anybody is interested, as the name, the date, opposed or in support of, and they all emailed me.
I have the same email. I do not have access to the names and haven't created a list. If that's necessary, then I'm happy to do that.
I think if you got the emails that came in through the email server, the public service, they're available through the clerk's office.
I received numerous emails on both sides of the issue, most frequently the 7-point email from Beaches Area Realtors. I also spoke on the phone with Paul Sego from Expedia at least a month ago, as well as Kenny from Airbnb, who I met in person again. It was over a month ago when the original proposed ordinance came out.
I've had several conversations on the phone, in person. I've received several emails on both sides. I have submitted a list to the city clerk. I probably have 65 different people on that list. Some of that includes the property appraiser, the tax collector, and several other people that I wanted to talk to about compliance with regard to short-term rentals.
Thank you, ma'am. Before I continue, everybody okay? Do you need 5-10 minutes? This is a little bit longer than we're used to. Okay. You're going to call a 5-minute recess. Everybody plan on being back at 20 till, please.
And you thought you were going to skate out of here. Yes, I do. I told my daughter what.
Before we shift back into short-term rentals, I've just been informed that I couldn't see the young man before because he's behind someone, but there's a Boy Scout back there. And you are working on a merit badge, I would take it, is that correct? Well, we're gonna make you earn it. Come up here and tell us your name.
I'm Zane, and I'm Zane Suarez. We're in Troop 277, and I'm working on the citizenship and the community merit badge.
Well, good for you, Zane. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, I'm going to vary slightly from the agenda, or from the script, and I'm going to ask the city manager to introduce some of the concepts that have been passed forward by the planning commission. Or I'm sorry, city attorney. I'm losing it.
It's getting late. Yes, so the ordinance before you is the short-term vacation rental ordinance. It's here to you on first reading after a city council public workshop on June 27th. There was much feedback. You have a summary of the changes that were made based on that feedback and a summary of the regulations as it remains. Planning Commission held a public hearing on July 22nd. The Planning Commission made positive recommendation of approval, but with consideration of the following changes. They would like to see the max occupancy defined as 2 bedrooms plus 2, rather than the 2 bedrooms, 2 per bedroom, or 1 per 150 square feet, whichever is less. They would like to see us define parking standards with consideration of older dwellings without the required 2 paved spaces, allowing the ability to park on the grass. Discussed was at that meeting was some crafting of some grandfathering language. In discussions with staff, we came up with some suggestions that could be crafted as a max parking standard. It's in line with some other jurisdictions that says no more than 1 vehicle per bedroom, with maximum vehicles allowed on site not to exceed the number of bedrooms plus 1. Still saying no on-street parking, and asking that paved area parking must be utilized first. They also ask that we define person for the purposes of occupancy, so as not to include small children or infants. They ask you to consider discussing defining a person as over 24 months or some other reasonable age such that infants and small children were not included in the occupancy count. They also request council to put this out for a year, in a year review the cost and revenue expended on this ordinance and revisit the fees. In addition, I'm recommending one further alteration to remove reference to the National Fire Protection Association NFPA 101 Life Safety Code, as in discussions with the fire marshal it is redundant to the compliance with the Florida Fire Prevention Code, because Florida Fire Prevention Code encompasses the NFPA. And so it was just redundant language, and I'm proposing removing that. It has been discussed on, council's received several emails about preemption and attorney's fees and scary thoughts like that. Apparently there was some confusion created after the June 27th workshop where it was referenced by a member of the public that new provision of Chapter 509 provided for attorney's fees. Chapter 509 is the state regulation of public lodging establishments. I'm aware of no cause of action within that chapter. Apparently, what was intended was to refer to a new chapter section, Chapter 57. Chapter 57.112 will provide for a potential award of attorney's fees in a civil action filed against a local government for the adoption or enforcement of an ordinance on the grounds that it is expressly preempted by state constitution or state law. That section would apply only if the proposed ordinance were seeking to regulate or what is expressly preempted to the state. So that begs the question, what is preempted to the state? This section, Chapter 509, 032.7 states that a local law or ordinance or regulation may not prohibit a vacation rental. It also may not regulate duration or frequency of that rental. However, 509032 also states that it does not preempt the authority of a local government to conduct inspections of public lodging establishments for the compliance with Florida Building Code and the Florida Fire Prevention Code. The ordinance proposed only regulates short-term vacation rentals. It does not seek to prohibit them. In fact, it specifically allows for that use anywhere in all zoning districts where residential use is currently permitted or a use by condition.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes. The proposed ordinance does not seek to prohibit. In fact, it specifically allows for the use in all zoning districts where residential use is a permitted use or a conditional use. It does not regulate the duration or the frequency of any vacation rental. It provides reasonable rules and regulations for the health, safety, and welfare and morals of the city as a whole. It provides occupancy, parking, solid waste, the inspections mentioned, and some postings and leasing info. I provided to the clerk earlier today, and I believe each of you have a copy of a chart that has 7 other jurisdictions. I just put this together last week to kind of compare what are other jurisdictions doing in regards to max occupancy, in regards to their parking standards, in regards to solid waste and inspections, and other being pretty much, are they requiring a responsible party? Are they requiring leasing info? Are they requiring postings? You can see we line up pretty on line with most all of them. At the proposed planning commission max occupancy, we come the closest to probably the majority of them, with 2 per bedroom plus 2 for a common room. Fort Lauderdale also allows for 4 persons under the age of 13-year-old to be exempt as a calculation for the max occupancy. Others don't define that at all. Parking standards, I've seen where we started at 1 per 3. There are several other jurisdictions, though, 3 of them to be exact, that do 1 per bedroom. So that would be in line with some of the things that Ms. Ireland and I discussed on the parking standards as to maybe 1 per bedroom plus 1, as we do have many older homes that do not have the required paved parking. However, just completely taking it out, again, all new development, and Ms. Ireland can correct anything that I may mistake, or Mr. Mann, as all new development must have the 2 required parking spaces paved. So a new development will be outgoing. Those would be non-compliant. The other ones that do have older, they may have pavers going up, the grass in between, they may have gravel going down, and that was the way that Jack's Beach was developed, and that does exist out there. And they are grandfathered in at this point. So addressing that concern with 1 per bedroom, or you may have other considerations that you would like us to look at. But it talks about the solid waste, the inspections. Again, our inspections have been reduced to, there are no annual inspections. These will only be an initial, and then upon a change of ownership, a modification, or a complaint related to life safety code and fire building code. And I'm here for any questions that you may have. I can answer some of what was out there. As to the max occupancy is overnight guests, transient guests. These aren't the guests you have during the day. The size of a bedroom is 70 square feet. And, you know, how you want to define bedroom, there was much to do over the definition of a sleeping room or having no definition of what a bedroom was. So what I did was adopt Florida statute, and that's what I've done pretty much throughout the ordinance, is to try and keep us in line with what's in Florida statute. As to the definition of a bedroom, that again is your policy decision. It does not have to be tied to that specific Florida statute. That is under the public health in relation to septic tanks, and that's how they define what a bedroom is, and that's where it comes from. I spoke with our fire marshal and your building official earlier today on what they see as a definition of a bedroom, and they don't go to square feet, and they don't look at particularly at the square feet. What they do look at is whether there's a door, an emergency ingress or egress window,
basically, and a closet. That's pretty much how they're going to interpret this. And that's really what matters, is what their interpretation when it comes to inspecting this. So the definition is up for interpretation if you want to define no square footage, 100 square footage, 70 square footage. We do not have to adopt Chapter 381. So noted that on the table for your discussion. Max occupancy, I think, also is something that we should look at. Parking standards and anything else that you may want me to review.
Thank you. Mr. Manning, do you have any responses for issues that were brought up by people in the audience?
Bill Meehan, Planning Director. At this point, not that Denise hadn't already touched on. The biggest thing is there should be some level of square footage cap, and there is, in addition, or as a parallel to the number of occupants based on bedrooms, just to handle any aberrant situations. But other than that, I'm just here to answer questions. At this point, we've got some planning commission, you've got their recommendations. So.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, at this point, I'm going to request a motion for the above ordinances read by title.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2019-8118, amending the Land Development Code, Chapter 34, to define and regulate short-term vacation rentals where permitted.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Before opening the floor for discussion or questions by the council, please be reminded that our decision will be based on criteria set forth in the Land Development Code, staff's report, and recommendation from the Planning Commission and the public input at all hearings. At this point, I'll open the floor to the council, and Mr. Goldstein, you're recognized, sir.
Just to follow up as to your commentary, Ms. May, who would, as far as the parking, because as I talked about, long in our first discussion, there are really two things that I'm in supportive of this ordinance is the parking requirements, ensuring that people park in the driveways and not on the streets, and the occupancy. Who would be grandfathered in and why?
Well, you have many older homes, especially on the southern end, where the actual residence was built, and back in the day it was built with gravel, or they just parked on grass, or they sometimes have, two strips of pavers going down with grass in between, which wouldn't meet the definition of the current code or current building requirements. So that situation exists for sometimes in 2 or 3 bedroom homes, and I believe that's in the packet of information that you may have gotten from Ms. Sandoval. She gives you an example with some pictures of how that exists out there. For current, whether they were short-term vacation rentals or not, that you currently have residents that are parking on the lawn. So the just no parking on the lawn was a burden. And so we're looking to craft something that might address those situations where that exists.
Are we permissible to create, if they want to operate the house as a business, are we permitted to have them provide some sort of either gravel parking, paver parking, concrete parking? Are we permitted to do that? Or is there some sort of grandfathering that we wouldn't be permitted to do that?
Actually, you can craft some limited grandfathering language that might state that they're going to bring you some evidentiary proofs, whether that's pictures like Ms. Sandoval brought, and still say that this is the number of bedrooms I have 3, that I've got an ability to do 8 in my home. And I need to be able to provide parking in that instance, depending on how you define parking. Right now it's 1 for 3, so I need to provide 3 parking spaces. And show, while they're not paved, I have off-street parking, although it's in the grass. But here's the gravel, here's 2, and there's 1 right here. Showing you that there is an ability, and by affidavit and that proof, to say, I have off-street parking, it's not paved, but it won't be on the street, and here's where it is. And we could provide some grandfathering. I think some others may have some thoughts and verbiage that we could put around that.
I'm welcome to that discussion. I'm in support of that just because I wanted to keep it aesthetically pleasing so you're not having to see cars in the grass and keep the cars off the street. And I think if you're going to operate it as a business and that's something that you're choosing to do, I don't think that is a burdensome requirement in my opinion, but I welcome your suggestions. Everybody else, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Golden?
I'd like to start out by saying that I've done quite a bit of research, and some of the things I'd like to point out that I think our ordinance is going to help with is compliance with the things that short-term rentals should be doing, but unfortunately I found that a lot of them are not. Just in looking at some of the short-term rentals around my neighborhood, I found that most of them have not paid the Jacks Beach business tax. Several, like Mr. Ryman said, were homesteaded, and they're advertised as short-term rentals. Some of them are not paying the tourist development tax after having discussions with the tax collector's office. And the Department of Business and Professional Regulations, as Mrs. Sandoval mentioned, you can go and see licenses there, and just individual homes that are being that are licensed as vacation rentals, there are only 20 for the city of Jacks Beach. Now, we know there's more than 20 individual homes that are being operated as short-term rentals. So I think that this ordinance is going to be important to encourage compliance, or to require compliance, as well as make sure that information is getting to the other authorities that need to be involved in the compliance process. And I also have seen the problems that a lot of these residents have spoken about. And I know where the short-term rentals are in my neighborhood, and yes, the cars bleed out into the streets. There's noise on the weekends or late at night when people are needing to go to work the next day. And so I understand the issues that the residents are having, because I've seen it in my neighborhood. I also spoke to a resident that lives across the street from Fletcher Middle School, and I'd like to put this out there as a discussion point as well. The house next door to her is a short-term rental, and she asked me, how do I know if there's not a sexual offender or a sexual predator in that house? And it's right across the street from the school. I looked at Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Lauderdale has language in their short-term rental ordinance that requires the managers or the owners of the property to add some language in their advertising if their house is within 1,400 feet of a school or a playground, I guess areas where sexual offenders and sexual predators are not permitted to be, that they include language in their advertising that says, it is unlawful for a sexual offender or sexual predator to occupy this residence. And then it cites, code or statute. So I'd like to put that out there as something that we might want to consider as well, because I personally live near an elementary school, and I appreciate what this resident, her concerns, because she was a former teacher, and so I would like to suggest that we consider adding that as a requirement for what would be required in the advertising for homes that are within 1,400 feet of a school, or I guess playgrounds are also included, and a school bus stop. The responsible party, I think, is very, very important. I mean, that's the key part, and the residents tonight have spoken about that, and I think that we definitely, I know that there have been some questions about responsible parties, and people have brought that up, but I think that we have to have that for the accountability, as Mr. Ryman said, and for responsibility when it comes to issues. So I just wanted to put those things out there. And as far as the parking goes, Mr. Vogel was saying, I support what you're saying as far as ensuring that we have parking provided that's not just grass parking.
Let's, before we go any further, let's start looking at these as potentially motions for modification of the documents been provided to us. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Vogel saying, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you could come up with a motion to modify the ordinance as written. And same, and we'll be coming back to these, this goal. And in the interim, Mr. Nichols, you're in queue, so go ahead.
While he's forming the the parking on the grass issue. One of the questions I had is, in the south area, we are transitioning from a non-curb and gutter, kind of rural pavement structure to something that has curb and gutter. Are these buildings that right now throughout our city, a lot of these people would be able to fit into that parking, but once we put the curb and gutter in, then that area is going to be removed. Their ability to park in their yard is going to be removed, and it'll become on-street parking. So I think are those places going to be grandfathered in? That's one of the questions I had, because they won't be able to park on the right of way in the grassed area. That was one question that I had. The other one is the Honorable Wilson, Janelle Wilson. I mean, she did make a comment about the evacuation maps, where in the size of the residence that we're talking about, I think that might be a little overkill. I'm not really sure. I don't think people are going to go to the refrigerator to look for an evacuation map. Also, I don't see the fee schedule in my package, and I know one of the biggest conversations we're having was to make sure we had a reduced fee schedule so we would get more participation. I haven't seen that. I know we were originally talking 500 and then we ended up at 50 to 100 or something in that range. I don't see that included in my package, so I'd like to see the updated fee schedule. And the industry as a whole, I mean, my main, at first I thought there was only like a couple that were really problems and stuff, but the more I talk to people, the more I walk around the neighborhood and talk to people that, there is an issue, and there's a big issue. And, I think Airbnb and the people that are doing these really need to be looking at self-regulation also, and making sure that they're not a bad actor, and that Vacation Rental Owner, Airbnb, I mean, Airbnb has a way for neighbors to at least report problems now. So I think the industry as a whole really needs to push for self-regulation to find solutions to these issues, because I mean, I feel terrible for some of my neighbors that are having to deal with parties next door. They have little kids that are being kept up all night, and it's not good for a neighborhood feel. I know some of the people, the lady that has her sisters in her parents' house, I think that is, I think that's a great tribute to them, and I have no problem with them doing it. But I think what we're doing is not putting a onerous task for people to be able to do what we're doing, and we've come off substantially the initial requirements that were included, and we are trying to come up with something that will work for everybody. So, and that's just all I have to say right now.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like everybody to do is, if you have modifications you want to make to the ordinance, draft out some basic motions. And in the interim, I'm going to say a few words. I said Ms. Hoffman hit her cue, but I'm going to take license and move forward with a few of my comments. Last week in USA Today, headline, "They killed our city. Locals feel helpless as vacation rentals overrun Sedona, Arizona." That concerns me more than I can say. One gentleman got up and mentioned that legislators in Tallahassee are more intelligent than we are, or words to that effect, and that they know better, so it's up to them to make those decisions. Actually, the citizens of the state of Florida in 1968, during the Constitution Revision Commission, voted to put forward an amendment called Home Rule. That gives local government the opportunity to regulate commerce and laws applicable to that municipality. I don't know of a human being I've ever met with the potential of one individual tonight who said that they'd rather see this be handled at the legislative level, at the state level. Most people would say they want their local governments to be able, because they live in the neighborhood and they live with you as this all takes place. Several comments were made during the discussion from the audience about enforcing existing laws. I'm trying to find visually the best possible scenario, analogy I can draw to help describe what the problem is. But when you have short-term housing, short-term rentals, and people are leaving every couple of days, the police go over there every 2 to 3 times a day, 4 to 5 times a day. We don't have 1,000 policemen to run around and enforce recurring problems over and over and over again. So it's imperative for us to put some form of regulation forward that would take care of that so that we don't have to overtax our police department and make sure people understand what the requirements are and that they're communicated to the guests of the short-term rental. Next week is the League of Cities and the League of Mayors meeting. I sit on the board of directors of the Florida League of Mayors. Home rule is one of our more important topics. I can assure you that I'm going to be raising this issue with the board of directors next week rather. Last I heard, and this could change, but 90% of the Airbnb / short-term rentals are taking place in 13 counties. And that's the coastal counties, and that's the Disney area, is what I recall. There's not a bunch of intelligent legislators in Tallahassee that are pushing for these commercial entities to overtake our cities. Quite frankly, there's a lot of lobbyists in Tallahassee. Somebody mentioned the war chest. There's a lot of lobbyists up there that have a lot of easy pickings since only 13 to 68 counties are concerned about short-term rental issues right now. I feel very strongly that when you live in a single-family neighborhood, it should be a single-family neighborhood. I feel very strongly that when you make that your biggest personal investment as a family or as a young family coming up, to see that value destroyed by somebody who could give a rat's patootie about whether or not they're making too much noise next to you at 3 o'clock in the morning troubles me significantly. The comment about tabling for 90 days, we've tabled this more than enough times. I think it's time for us to step up. This is a 2-reading event. This is the first reading of an ordinance that goes into a second reading. We can suddenly make some changes, and one thing that what I'd like to consider tonight is that the council looks at what the planning commission recommended as well as what the city attorney put together for us from the similar cities, and make some suggestions tonight so that we can at least get a first reading through and move forward with this legislation. Homeowners, business owners have rights. I respect that. I work for a company, they have rights, and I protect their rights. But homeowners have rights too. And if this all started on, everybody says, well, it's one house. You're saying one house makes it. No, it started with one house with me about a year ago when I got direct exposure to a house that was purchased by an LLC in a single-family neighborhood and turned into a hotel. And what that did to the people immediately next door to them, including their 13-year-old daughter who can't go out and lay out in the sun anymore because the young men in the big parties come out there and wolf whistle. Something's got to change, folks. This isn't about condemning people who have rentals. I live on Yale Avenue in Jacksonville Beach. I live directly across the street from 3 duplexes. There's 6 units. 3 of the units are short-term rentals. I have 0 problems with them. And I have 0 problems with most of you in this room that have rented for decades. That's not the problem. The problem is what's happening in our single-family neighborhoods when we let this just come in, let these companies come in, buy these homes, and completely destroy our culture as a city. I'm going to, Ms. Hoffman, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and I'll write down a couple of my recommended changes. Go ahead.
Most of what I have to offer echoes what you said, but the idea that if all we did was just enforce trash, noise, and parking, this problem would be solved. I definitely probably subscribe to that very early on in this process, but those are probably 3 of the most arbitrary and hard things to enforce, and I think especially when you're dealing with new residents every weekend, it makes that even harder. In consideration of the parking issue, though, I will say that up kind of in my end of the town is issue of parking across sidewalks. So we just want to make sure that we keep that in mind because that's been a major complaint with residents up in the north end of the city. I also wanted to say, I wanted to commend Ms. Sandoval on this letter. This is really well thought out, and I definitely agree with using the tools you have first. I think that we're at the point now where we're ready to move on this, and I do not agree with tabling it for 90 days, but I do agree with the fact that we have the list of the people that are short-term rentals that we have uncovered through a third-party company that hopefully we'll be able to use that list to get out a lot of information on whatever this ordinance finally does look at. It is a little bit hard to, a little bit disingenuous when we say there's only 7 or 8 people paying Jacksonville Beach business taxes, because a lot of, I have friends who have home-based businesses that didn't even know they're registered and paying taxes to the state and county, but didn't even know that you had to pay a Jacksonville Beach business tax because they're not a brick and mortar company, so they didn't necessarily come up on the radar of the city. But so that I kind of give people a little bit of a pass, but when this goes into place, you need to make sure that people know exactly the steps that they need to take in Jacksonville Beach to be legally operating. As far as the recommendations from the Planning Commission, I like the revisit the maximum occupancy to 2 persons per bedroom plus 2, because I feel like that helps us with that issue of maybe it's not a true bedroom, maybe it's a den, maybe it's a pass-through room. That's those extra 2 people, I would think. So I think that is something I would be supportive of. Revisit the definition of persons. I don't think a child's a person until they can introduce themselves to me, but and shake my hand. But that's probably not the right standard. That 16 to 18, those are, at 18 is an adult, 16 is basically an adult. But I don't know what the right age there is, but I do agree that a baby shouldn't count against your occupancy or your parking or car parking requirements. So I don't know what the right thing is there, but I do know I like the 2 persons per bedroom plus 2. And that's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. I'll start where Chris left off. The two persons, 2 people plus 2, I like that idea, so I'd make a motion that do you want to just start doing motions?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. I'd like to make a motion that we amend the ordinance so that maximum occupancy would be 2 people per bedroom plus 2 additional people.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries.
I do have a slight issue with the definition of a bedroom, having a door, obviously you have a door, but a closet. I grew up in a home with there's some older homes here. We didn't have closets. Our kitchen didn't even have closets. They were all mobile pieces of furniture. So I think that's very onerous on some of the older homes in the city if they have to have a built-in closet. I don't know if we want to amend that and say that they have to have like a movable closet, but just like a walk-in, like an open door closet. That's very common in houses now. But I know that there are a lot of houses that don't have closets. I know it sounds silly, but there are a lot of houses that don't have closets. Older houses, this isn't the newer ones. So I don't know how you get, I would like to remove, well, of course then in the language it just says closet, it doesn't say built-in closet. So I guess you could have it on the,
Which most people would have if they didn't have a hanging closet.
well, we didn't call them armoires, we just called it the closet. We called it the closet. Okay, so as long as we understand that closet is not a built-in closet part. I like the definition of, I like defining parking standards by bedroom, 1 per bedroom plus 1. I think that takes care of a lot of it. I would remove the no parking on grass, just because you have a lot of older homes that don't have paved parking, and we all have neighborhoods that you park, depending on where you live, you see more parking on grass than in other neighborhoods. So I would, we really have to look at the parking no parking on grass. I had that one highlighted somewhere.
Keep in mind too, and for the audience, this is the first reading of an ordinance, we'll have a second reading, and we can make modifications during the second reading.
So it's under section 34-411 C2. The last line says, on-street or grass parking shall not be permitted. I make a motion that we strike that.
Okay, motion on the floor. Is there a second? Motion dies. Okay. Any others you want to bring up?
Yeah, I can just skip one. I'll let it go.
If you come back to you, honestly, Mr. Vogelsang.
Working with me here, I would make a motion that we modify the parking plan to allow for 1 parking space per bedroom plus 1 parking space for the common area, to the same rules as the occupancy. So if you have a 4-bedroom, you would get, just like you get 10 people, you get half that for your parking space. That's kind of where I'm going with it, parking spaces. But that those spaces have to be available in order for them to be accessed. So it must have, here's what it says, 1 parking space plus 1 for common area per bedroom available so long as off-street parking is provided on the property in the form of pavers, concrete, or gravel, and not blocking the sidewalks. So that takes away the grass argument, because I think that my purpose of my, well, excuse me.
Could you please reread your motion?
Parking spaces, number of parking spaces allowed would be 1 parking space per bedroom plus 1 for common area, so long as off-street parking is provided on the property in the form of pavers, concrete, or gravel, and not blocking the sidewalk.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Mr. Mott?
Again, I think that one right there might be onerous. So if you have a 5-bedroom home, you'd have to have 6 parking spots on property, paved, and if it's paved, now you're starting to butt up against the 35% lot coverage. I just don't, if they could park under the, and I'm not a big fan of parking on grass, even though we do that in my house, just because it's either that or you park in a really big puddle.
TMI.
I agree with the 1 per bedroom plus 1, but I can't agree with the paved or pavers and that other piece, just because of just the layout of some of the houses and what we have, and I do agree with not parking across the sidewalk.
Okay, any other comments about the motion on the floor?
Bill, does gravel count towards your lot coverage? I didn't think it did, so that's why I included it.
The Wayne Planning Director, gravel does not count, the pavers do.
Right.
We also have our normal parking standards that apply to anybody else, like it has to be 5 feet off of any property line, so just be aware those underlying standards would also be there. And I'm assuming that, you're assuming that applicants will provide a parking plan to be reviewed by staff as part of their initial application, because I can tell you, anybody in anybody's front yard, you've got your front yard setback, but then there's usually anywhere from 5 to 15 feet of grass off of your property out in the public right of way. And it's going to be hard pressed to get an officer in the middle of the night to determine whether somebody's, parking out on the street on grass or they're on the private property. So I think that the only way we could do it would be to do it with a site plan showing it up front. You get them scanned and somebody pulls up the property, part of that is their parking sketch. That's the only way I think otherwise it's going to be a problem trying to enforce it in the middle of the night. I'm glad you brought that up though. But anyway, the gravel would not count against your lot coverage. If you chose to provide it in pavers or asphalt or concrete, it would count towards your lot coverage. One thing you might want to consider when I saw y'all going down that route, that's not to prevent anybody from voluntarily reducing their occupancy to accommodate the parking they have available on their site. I mean, I can't imagine, some of the tone of some of these comments that people would be willing to do that. But there's a way to make that work, even though your house would hold 16 people. Exactly. If you've only got 5 parking spaces out front, maybe that ought to be the requirement. Yes, sir.
Part of my making the motion was I can have 10 people, but they can only have 3 cars if I only want to provide 3 spaces. If I want to have 10 people, that's fine, but I have to have appropriate parking spaces available for those people, and if not, then I can't have 10 people there. If they want to bring 4 cars, they're not permitted to do that. I don't think, with it being gravel, and that's why I included gravel, it doesn't count toward lot coverage, so you wouldn't have to go through any variances to simply put in a gravel parking spot in your yard. And then I guess I would amend that motion to include Mr. Mann's suggestion that that parking plan would be attached to their application.
Okay, got an amendment to the first motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. And is there any further discussion? Are you done, Mr. Vogelsang?
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to ask, in the reread, does that also include the 1 per bedroom plus 1?
Yes.
In gravel, thank you.
Ms. Goldman?
I'd just like to point out that several residents that I've spoken to, they have issues and concerns about a lot of cars parking in the grass in yards. And so I understand Mr. Vogelsang's recommendation, because we have to figure out how to craft the language so that it isn't just a free-for-all and people can just pile 10 cars in the front yard. And, you know, I see that right now. There's a house that's several blocks down the street from me, and they're parking all over the place in the grass and on the sidewalk, and so that's an issue too. So I don't know if there's something else that we could do that would be a little less onerous, but still not open the door for people to just park all over their front yard.
I would think that, Mr. Mann, if you're comfortable, you don't have to get up. The second reading, if you have a recommendation of how best to maybe word that.
This kind of goes back to the argument as to whether or not you tie occupancy to the bedroom count versus available parking on site. And if it's available parking on site, it would be parked right now without any of the amendments. It would be parking that meets our code. That kind of self-fulfills. You can't have that many more cars there. But it seems like the tendency with the amendments and after the discussion in the workshop in the planning commission was to tie it to the number of bedrooms. Then you're backing yourself into parking. That's what I was saying before. Well, maybe somebody would voluntarily cut down their maximum occupancy based on their parking. But if there's not a requirement to do that, no, then you can get a lot of people doing that.
And can you help though with some, what we're trying to address are some of those that currently don't have paid parking at all, the older homes?
Well, that may speak to the maximum occupancy they could have.
Or what would you consider that they have in parking if they don't have?
Well, one of the earlier versions was based on the amount of available parking on the property. I'm not pushing that stance necessarily, but that would affect that. That's how you could do that.
I guess I'm asking that if none of it's paid, what's the available parking on site?
Then there's none. But right now, if you're, to Mr. Vogelsang's point, if you're grandfathered in for not having the 2 required parking spaces that have been required in the city for a long time, at least as long as I've been here, longer than that, then maybe you would get credit for not having those first 2 spaces. But then to go on beyond that, you'd have to pay like everybody else does. Because current houses have 2 parking spaces. You'd be getting credit for, well, we only have 1 on the site. You'd still get credit for, well, you could, in theory, park 2 spaces here if you were, a currently built house. But I don't know how that's going to speak to occupancy, because if you've got a 5-bedroom house with no parking, you're inviting a parking problem. I don't pretend to know the answer to this one.
No, this is a hard one. This is one we're really trying to craft around on how to deal with these.
And that's why you see different cities regulating some by the amount of available parking, some not worried about parking, some allowing it on-street parking. We don't allow on-street parking to meet your parking requirement for any use in the city, so I don't know why we would start doing that just for these uses.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Hoffman?
Being that it's 10:30, and this is, I think there's a lot more thought that needs to go into this parking issue, because the other thing I don't want to have happen is everybody gravels over their yard so they can max their occupancy. I'm going to vote against this amendment, because I think that we need to kind of go back to the drawing board on the parking specifically, and maybe when we have the second reading, maybe have a couple proposed options for us that would work to achieve what we're looking to do, but not be onerous. I can't imagine doing a parking plan for 400 different short-term rentals. So I think we need to take a realistic look at how we handle that.
Amen. All right, I will withdraw my motion so that Mr. Mann can craft us some options on the parking issue, because I think, you got a general idea of where we want to go, but I don't know how we get there. I'd make a motion that we delete the evacuation plan requirement.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Got a second, any discussion?
Could I ask for just a point of clarification, because there are two different things. There's an evacuation map, which I think is what they're referring to, but then there's a requirement to tell them the evacuation plan for people to leave. And I believe you're referring to the map.
I would make a motion as it does.
Well, the evacuation plan is how to get
Oh,
off the
for
island.
I thought you meant evacuating the house, a map of the house.
The map is what I think you're trying to.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, good. And that's got a second, motion, second on the floor, any other discussion? Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's getting late and it's frustrating, but you gotta hang in there with us and keep your voices down, please. Thank you. Motion and second on the floor, any other discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries.
Lastly, one more motion,
Okay,
and we'll see if it gets a second, but I move that we delete the NFPA compliance requirement in 6B on page 9.
Second.
got a motion and second, any discussion?
And just for discussion on that, I think that to have, like I kind of alluded to in my first comments, I'm all for limiting parking and occupancy, but to get into code enforcement and inspections of people going into the house and have, the NFPA requirements are changing constantly. To require somebody to keep up with all of them and keep their house in compliance with that, I think it not only taxes our staff, but it taxes the owners, and I'm just not, if a renter doesn't want to live in a house because it doesn't have appropriate things in it, then that's on the owner, but I don't think that's something for us as a city to regulate, so that's why I'm making the motion.
Okay, thank you. City Attorney, are you comfortable with that? Is there any
I
legal
want
issues
some
or concerns?
clarification. We're only talking about National Fire Protection Association 101 Life Safety, not the Fire Prevention Code and the Fire Building Code? Okay, I already made a motion. I actually asked for that alteration to remove because it's redundant, as NFPA is actually encompassed in Florida Fire.
Okay, for clarification point, please read your motion one more time.
Well, then I would make the motion that we delete NFPA and Fire Prevention Code.
Then we do have a legal issue in that they are subject to Fire Prevention Code regardless. Because if you're a transient public lodging establishment in this state, you must comply with the Florida Building Code and the Florida Fire Prevention Code. And he can't exempt anyone from the fire.
And that applies to short-term rentals, not just hotels?
Every single structure, period.
Okay, well then I'll just make the motion that we delete the NFPA requirement.
Motion on the floor, we still have a second? Okay. Okay. Any last minute discussion, Mr. Nichols?
If it's already required for all the buildings, why does it need to be included?
We're asking for an affidavit from them is all to say that you are in compliance with Florida Fire Prevention Code
Okay.
and Florida Fire Building Code.
Anyone else? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. Mr. Millen.
I make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we add in section. Let's get in there. In section 334-411. On page 14, the H. We'll just get there. Underneath H, there's a 1, 2, and probably some other 3, 4 that we also add the sex offender language that Sandy was talking about, and when a short-term rental is being advertised, that they let people know if they are within certain footage of a park, a bus stop, or a school, that registered sex offenders and they can't rent it.
May I make a recommendation?
Sure.
When thinking about this language, I would recommend that it actually be under section C, look at page 10, where it talks about advertising.
Yes, there. Perfect.
And I would add it to the end of that and then define the sexual offender and sexual predators.
That would be fabulous.
Second.
Madam Clerk, do you have the motion? Okay, could you restate the motion, please?
That we add language that Sandy suggested, that rental properties, when advertising, note that if the property is within a certain whatever the legal square footage is from a bus stop, playground, and a school, that any sexual predator or offender is not able to rent or stay in that property.
We're good, Madam Clerk? Okay.
So it's not just the renter, it's also your buddy can't be in.
So, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
If you meant distance, not square footage, correct?
Yeah, whatever it is by Florida law.
Okay. Are you done, Mr. Moore? Ms. Golden?
I would just say that Fort Lauderdale used the term occupy, so would we want to use occupy as opposed to rent?
I would personally recommend it from a legal standpoint. It's really hard to say when people move around all day, but somebody staying overnight, and sexual offenders and sexual predators are supposed to be registering where they are anyway. And yes, I would recommend occupy. It's probably the better option for enforcement.
Okay. Anybody else? Mine are covered. Anybody else got anything you want to cover? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. Any other proposed changes? Mr. Nichols?
I still have a question about the fee schedule.
Yes, sir. That's not before you on your agenda because it's by resolution, and so speaking to it tonight would pass it. However, it is on the website, and it has been reduced. She's not looking at the latest and greatest. What we did do is go down to, as mentioned, 150, and then a collective registration. All the other fees were removed. We're sticking to 162. So it was just 150 per year, plus 10 if you were a licensed agent registering 10. It would be 150 plus 90, if that makes sense. And then there was an inspection of $100, but that's only once.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Keep in mind that we do have the ability to make changes on the second reading. Ms. Dumont?
I just want to note that this makes me happy, not that we're here for why we're here, but it makes me happy to see people within our city fighting for their property values, their business rights. You're fighting for your neighborhood, and that just makes me feel warm inside that I wish you all could come out more often. And same thing for the businesses. You're trying to make sure that you're able to make a living, and I think that this ordinance is really, if it needs to be changed, loosened up or tightened further in the future, we have the ability to do that, but we need somewhere to start, and I think this is a good starting ground. So I just want to thank everyone who came out tonight for coming out tonight for a very long night, and you guys get to leave and we still have stuff on the agenda.
Ms. Hoffman?
Just wanted to go back to the definition of child, if we were going to do, at what point is a child a person? Again, I have no opinion on that, but perhaps that's something that we can deal with at the next meeting, along with parking, to determine what other cities are calling persons.
Somebody brought up 24 months earlier today.
Again, I have no opinion on when a child becomes a person.
College, I don't know.
Depends on which college.
Yeah, I'm still reading.
Okay. No motion on this yet. Ms. Golden?
I'd like to echo Ms. Dumont's comments, and I'd also like to say that I'd like to recognize some of the people who have been compliant and are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and several of those people I have spoken to tonight, including Mrs. Sandoval and Ms. Hayes. We had several email conversations, so I do appreciate that, and I think that this is a really good start for our community.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
And echoing them and Mayor Latham, sorry, I think both groups really need to stay involved in order to be able to handle this at our local level. At the state level, they're going to try very hard to to take this out of our hands. If you're a property owner, it's not just talk to your representative, talk to the people at the state level to let them know your concern, and the people that are involved in the industry. I think y'all need to really be supportive of some kind of something that allows us to maintain our control at a level to be supportive of what we're trying to do.
And I'll hopefully finish off the commentary by saying Mr. Nichols is 100% correct. And I think, first off, I want to thank my colleagues for the thoughtful process that was involved in getting us where we are today. There needs to be compromise. And we got a bunch of residents here, we got a bunch of business owners here. There's got to be compromise, and it's got to take place at the state level too. Right now, the state is not very local friendly when it comes to short-term rentals, and so Mr. Nichols' point's well taken. Our Senator Aaron Dean and our representative is Cord Bird, and if you need contact information for them, come up and see me afterwards. I've arranged town hall meetings with them to meet with the residents, to talk about this. The only way that we can win this and provide this compromise, not to hurt businesses, not to hurt Airbnbs, but to provide an environment where everybody wins, it's going to take continued dialogue. So I want to congratulate my colleagues on what I think is a fair compromise for a first reading. We'll continue to take inputs for the second reading and take it from there. So without any additional inputs from the council, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes, and you want to take another 5-minute recess while the room clears, or are you guys okay?
No.
Okay, all right.
I'll be back.
So the council will move back to Okay, we're going to move forward, so I'd ask you if you're in the room, please maintain silence while we conduct business. Thank you. Okay, we're moving to tab A, under ordinances, and Madam Clerk, please read ordinance number 2019-8122 by title only.
An ordinance to amend an ordinance enacting and establishing a comprehensive land development regulation and official zoning map for the incorporated area of the city of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, as authorized by Chapter 163.3202 Florida statutes, by amending Article 7, Zoning District, Division 2, Section 34-343, Commercial, General C2, Paragraph D, Conditional Uses, to add craft distillery, add subparagraph 18, to repeal ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith and for other purposes.
Okay, once again, this ordinance is for amendment to the Land Development Code, and is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. Second reading, thank you. Under the state laws of the state of Florida, an ordinance which changes the actual list of permitted, conditional, or prohibited uses within a zoning category, or which otherwise changes the text of the Land Development Code, is a quasi-legislative proceeding. A quasi-legislative proceeding means that the governing body is acting in its rule-making capacity. It is the duty of the council to arrive at sound decisions regarding the use of the property within the city. This includes receiving citizen input regarding the proposed uses within a zoning category. The application has been reviewed by the staff and the Planning Commission for consistency with other portions of the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. The council may hear from all interested parties in the legislative determination of an amendment to the text of the Land Development Code. The council's decision on the text amendment application is based on criteria set forth in section 34-211 of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy of this criteria. Okay, would the spokesperson for the project like to speak? Ed, come on up.
You say would I like to speak or do I have to speak?
You'd like to.
Ed Malin, 1436 Beach Boulevard. Currently, craft distilleries are allowed in industrial zoning in Jacksonville Beach. My simple request is, by exceptional use, I believe is what you call it, to allow those in commercial, general. Also, my goal is to build a craft distillery on the corner of the Angie's lot, the northeast corner of the lot there. And that's my simple request.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Are there any members of the public that would like to address this issue? Okay. Yes, sir. Come forward, please. Give us your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Mark Beemendorf. I live on at 1505 Osceola Avenue. I'm not against this. I just would like to point out the irony that we're essentially restricting short-term rentals, and the chief complaint is the degradation of the county and too much commercial and too much partying and loud noise. But on the agenda is proposal to introduce both marijuana and whiskey. So, just think about that.
Thanks for the heads up.
Doesn't really seem to jive with me.
Thanks for that.
Short-term rentals bad, whiskey, weed good. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah, Justin Ross, 403 12th Avenue South. Just in direct opposition of what that gentleman just said, I've grown up in this general vicinity, and Ed Malin has been a stand-up guy at Angie's since I can remember, always providing cheaper discount lunches for Fletcher students. I remember last time I was at Grom, like a month or 2 ago, a bunch of the Sharks players came in and they'd obviously just left the practice. Ed walks over and he's like, hey guys, I appreciate what you do for the community and I like watching you guys and then what have you, and gave them all free lunch. So I just want to say that guy is stand up. I'm not for or against his facility that he's building, but I do want to reiterate that that guy's the next dude.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Sandy, come up, give us your name and address one more time, please.
I'm Shandy Thompson, I live at 522 3rd Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach, Florida, 32250. There's really kind of snap dead time right now, but I am excited about this. As the majority of you know, I live 3 blocks, a little over 3 blocks from this, so I'm looking forward to cleaning up. I do love Angie's. It's kind of sad to see their subs and stuff go, but I'm looking forward to a new renovated building and a much nicer entrance as soon as you cross the bridge. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? I got a question for you, Ed. Are you shutting down Angie's?
No. You really want that answer?
Yeah.
I hope not. There are a couple of phases to this project. First phase is getting the city's blessing to approve the distillery, then the construction of the distillery. Phase 2 and possibly phase 3 would incorporate building of a full-service barbecue restaurant on the back side of the distillery, with the possibility of Angie's being moved in between those 2 buildings. So one long building. Ideal situation, Angie stays exactly where it's at, and we don't have to move or relocate Angie's. Parking will dictate all of that scenario and all of those phases. I have to contain all of my customers on my lot. I don't have any overflow parking anywhere to do valet or anything like that. So parking is my biggest issue concerning how all this goes. But ideally, believe me, I don't want to tear down Angie's or move it. But the reality is, the economic reality of this large, expensive piece of property, and Angie's is really only going to do whatever it did today. It's not going to magically do $1 million more in sales next year. So I have to think about that going forward and, highest and best use of the property. But ideally, no, I don't want to kill my baby.
Okay. we don't either, I think, most of us, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments by the council? Seeing none, roll call, please. No, I thought there was a motion, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm running that again. Close public hearing. And now we're going to, before requesting a motion on the ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record both the names and the persons and the substance of the ex parte communication regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an interest in a decision which occurred outside the public hearing process. Starting with myself, the answer is none. Mr. Nichols?
None.
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 Thank you. Now I need a motion to approve the ordinance.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2019-8122, amending the land development code to add craft distillery to the list of conditional uses in the city's commercial general C2 zoning districts.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and before opening the floor for discussion or questions by the council, please be reminded that our decision will be based on the criteria set forth in the land development code, staff's report, and the recommendation of the planning commission, and all public input at all hearings. At this point, I open the floor to the council. Is there any discussion about the second reading? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Nichols?
Congratulations, Ed, yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding? Yes. Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. And we're moving to tab B in the ordinance section of your book. And this is not a public hearing, correct? Missing on that page. Page 0. Sorry, small technical thing here. Okay, Madam Clerk, please read ordinance number 2019-8123 by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, amending Article 8, Supplemental Standards, Division 2, Section 34-408, Medical Marijuana Treatment Center Dispensing Facilities and Pharmacies, amending the proximity requirements to comply with 381.986 Florida statutes by providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, once again, this ordinance for the amendment is an amendment of the Land Development Code before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its second reading. Under the laws of the state of Florida, an ordinance which changes the actual list of permitted, conditional, or prohibited uses within a zoning category, or which otherwise changes the text of the Land Development Code is a quasi-legislative proceeding. A quasi-legislative proceeding means that the governing body is acting in a rulemaking capacity. It is the duty of the council to arrive at sound decisions regarding the use of the property within the city. This includes receiving citizen input regarding the proposed uses within the zoning category. The application has been reviewed by the staff and the planning commission for consistency with other portions of the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. Council may hear from all interested parties in the legislative determination of an amendment to the text of the Land Development Code. Council's decision on text amendment application is based on the criteria set forth in section 34-211 of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy for this criteria. Okay, would the applicant spokesperson like to come forward? No. So it is staff.
And, yeah, I can give just a brief history of our Bill May, can give you that brief.
I think mine will be briefer. Bill Mann, Planning Director. Part of the statutes that required us to accommodate medical marijuana treatment facilities asked us to treat them no differently than we do pharmacies. There is the distance requirement for pharmacies that is not in the current regulations, so either add the 500 distance spacing between pharmacies and potentially make one or two non-conforming pharmacies. I haven't done that analysis. Or strike the distance requirement between medical marijuana treatment facilities. And that's what we're proposing as the latter.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone for or against this proposed motion to come forward? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Ex parte communications. Before requesting a motion on this ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record both the names and persons, the names of persons and the substance of any ex parte communication regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or a citizen who may have an interest in the decision which occurred outside the public hearing process. Beginning with myself, the answer is none. Mr. Nichols?
None.
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 None. None.
Okay, how about that? We're all tied. Okay, at this point, I'm going to request a motion to approve the ordinance as read by title, please.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2019-8123, amending Land Development Code, Section 34-408, to remove proximity requirements for the medical marijuana treatment center dispensaries to comply with Florida statutes.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Vogelsang.
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont.
Yes.
Councilmember Golding.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols.
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this marathon meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening. Thank you very much for your participation.
That's 7 hours.
Wait a minute.
We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You know what? It's like we're at the airport and our flight's been.
They're all
The question is, are they going to give the same discount to the Snickers stuff?
I don't know. I just want to, 15 years of history can't be
He's not going to make I was just teasing you.
Yeah, right. After they graduate, it's like, come back and see you when you're 21. Thanks for your service, guys. See you.
That's 4 hours without hearing from me.
So, if I recall correctly, that's the last thing finally starting to take claims on something.
Hey.